tonight we had on Jeff Harvey. We found out that he's not related to Steve Harvey, the host of Family Feud, which is a little bit of a disappointment, but we did get into some good topics tonight, safety related. And then what I think resonated most with me was just the culture that he's creating within his company to grow the company, not necessarily numbers, but giving back to everyone and giving them an opportunity to provide a lifestyle and a life for themselves aside from a paycheck. So take a listen. Let us know what you think.
You guys are going to love this one. Jeff's awesome.
Jeff, how old are you?
I am 33 years old.
Pause.
1985 baby.
Did you feel that pause?
Yeah, he did pause.
He hesitated.
I don't ever know how old I
think
am.
I
so.
gave you the dramatic pause on that one.
It was definitely your dramatic pause.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you've been.
yeah. I'm 33.
And how long have you been doing this? Construction.
I'm a Libra. I've been doing construction. I've been doing construction since summers in high school, man. Like, you know, between grade 10 and 11 and grade 11 and 12. And then I did a victory lap. I graduated with my class, but I went back because I didn't know what to do. And then, so I basically started the trades at 17.
And did you
went right into it?
Were you in? Was it a trade school or just a traditional high school?
No. So during high school summers, my parents built a new house, and I had a job opportunity to work for the gentleman who was building their house. It was, construction offered you like the quickest way to make a buck in 2 months, so you could buy a car, right, for the following school year. And so when I graduated high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Well, I actually wanted to be a chef, but my dad kind of gave me this ultimatum because I was enrolled in college for culinary arts, and I dropped out in the first week, which my parents were totally supportive of. But my dad just kind of said, "So now what, guy? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be a chef, but I'm going to start, in the restaurant. I'm going to be a bartender. I'm going to be a server, and then I'll work myself to the back of the house and kind of work my way up." And he goes, "That's great, man. You're going to be making so much tips. So let's figure out the plan. You're going to pay us room and board." And I don't know what it was, like $300 or $400 a month. And I was like, "Yo, not going to happen." You would never do that to my sisters. Like, and basically it was simple. He's like, "Listen, like, why don't you go work for Scott, the gentleman who built their house, while you figure this out, what you want to do, and you live here for free. And, and if you want to work at the restaurant on the weekends." So that's what I did. And it didn't take me more than 6 months, guys, to figure out that I really, really enjoyed what I was doing. I could see, my boss, the crew, I started to really look into it. Basically, in those first 6 months, transferable skills to me was I learned how to build a half pipe or a quarter pipe for my hobbies, my friends. So, but that's how I got into it. It was
why do you think your dad was fine with you joining like a construction trade but not being a chef?
You know what? I think it was my approach. I had a lot of support to go to school, culinary arts, and go down that route. Whereas to go work in a restaurant and to become a bartender and kind of live that lifestyle, I think you can see kind of what that lifestyle offered, and it's a very difficult lifestyle unless you are truly focused and, have, I guess, a good opportunity. But, I was working at a restaurant called Jack Astor's, and that's kind of a big box family pub, place you go after the game with your friends and you have beers, and it wasn't really a place that would offer me opportunities in becoming a chef.
Have you seen the movie Waiting?
I love that movie. Yeah,
I feel like that would have been you.
That's totally it. But you know what? It is. Except while I worked at the restaurant and construction, I was drawn to the guys on the job site far more than I was drawn to the crowd at the restaurant. Like at the restaurant, first of all, they were girls. Second of all, they were hot girls. third of all, every night ended with like going out as a restaurant group and like drinking excessively. And, you'd always hear about like so-and-so made out with so-and-so last night. And it was like this really kind of,
Click.
I don't know, like interwound, incestuous scenario, like even more so than high school. And I went out with him one night, and then I was like, no, this isn't for me. This is creepy. You got like that cool dude I looked up to on the grill cooking steaks and burgers, and I'm like, that's my stepping stone to being a chef. But I'm like, that guy's 30 and he's out every night. And then I didn't see drugs at the time. I wasn't that kind of person. I didn't see that stuff. But later in life, I was like, that guy was totally just doing drugs. And everyone wanted to be around him because he was older, but he was a big L bomb.
I don't know. But I mean, at least I think we know that you're still into cooking, right? Like it's still a hobby of yours?
It is very much a hobby. And I think that's kind of what my dad was kind of hinting at.
Is that it's a hobby, not a career?
Hobby. Yeah, and I mean it makes a great career. I think you have a tall mountain to climb to really make a name for yourself. But it's a tough lifestyle for someone like myself. I value family time, holidays, weekends, and in the hospitality industry, like that's your go time.
Right.
So that was pretty quick. I realized that pretty early on.
So you work for Scott. Did you work on your parents' house, or was this after? Did I miss that part?
So during my summers, I didn't work on my parents' house. I did, but that was kind of extracurricular. Like, for example, if I were to come home from school, I was big into bike riding, okay? So I'd come home from school and I'd get on my bike and I'd ride my bike until dinner and then, again, ride my bike till bedtime. So I'd come home from school and I'd be like, yo, Dad, where's my bike? And he goes, we got to backfill the back and the sides by hand. So it's like, he'd say, do one of those piles. It'd be a, half of a triaxle. You know how it falls kind of in two piles as the guy drives forward. He's like, do one of those halves, they'll get your bike. And, I had this conversation last night about raising girls and boys. I don't have kids, but Tyler, you have two girls. Teaching a boy or disciplining a boy, my response was like, okay, I get this done and I get my bike. I didn't argue with him, where I could imagine my sisters would have like screamed and, they would have argued back and just outsmarted him. But I was just like, okay, I get my bike after, an hour of shoveling, just get into it. But yeah, no, Scott, I was lucky enough that Scott took me on, and Scott was, he was a custom framer with a custom trim background, just a reputable, great guy all around. And we did some great projects. And I didn't realize it at the time because that was the only construction experience I had. So I had nothing to compare to. But I worked for him straight for 9 years, and I wanted to leave so many times. But every time I would really think about leaving and get the courage to go leave, every time I'd go to investigate a different company or whatever, different opportunity, from the outside, once I got close, it was a realization that, this company or this opportunity isn't going to offer me what Scott offered me.
But why were you thinking about
custom work?
Why were you thinking about bouncing? Was it environment? Was it wage?
No, I mean, wage, at that age, yeah, it was wage. I was amongst one of the lowest paid of my friend group, but I had consistent work, and more so Scott was a tough character, tough guy to be around, not a great people person. He was mean, I appreciate his work ethic now, but in those first few years, transitioning from a life of, going to high school, having 2 months off, getting off at 2:30, into a life where I'm working 8 till 5, 6 days a week, and, a period of time where my best friends are, they're moving away, but they come home and they're chilling for 4 months. They get a longer summer than we had before. And I'm working, and that was difficult, but basically it was more his personality. He wasn't a really nice guy. He wasn't a nice guy. So That's why I looked.
But you stuck around for 9 years.
I stuck around because, every Thanksgiving or holiday when all my friends would come back from university and we'd be, chumming at the pub, they're talking about Frosh Week, I'm talking about work, and then I'd find myself talking to other people who stayed back and they joined construction crews. And those guys that I have the conversations with, I was doing much cooler things. I'm building vaulted ceilings and we're using geometry, all those formulas that we all thought we would never use in grade 10. We were using those, opposed to, joining a union of thousands of workers and getting called to go build Walmart racks one week and getting called to go, lay straw around footings in a muddy construction site around, 100 house the next month. And I guess the way Scott taught us to present ourselves, like we are blue collar, but, he comes from a family of doctorate and educational people. So they're all in the educational field, but all got their doctrines. And he used to joke that he was the slum of his family. But meanwhile, very successful man. He had a big chip on his shoulder. But, like at work, no sweatpants, no ripped jeans, no branded T-shirts. And so when I go to the bar and I'm seeing kind of those construction workers wearing their muddy boots to the job, because it's you kind of identify, as what you do for a living to a sense. Even today, you wear a nice collared shirt, Nick, you look very much the part of a contractor. Johnny, you look very much a part. I imagine you wear your vintage branded clothing almost everywhere you go because it is who you are. So that's another thing, seeing the guys at the pub look like a kind of a rough and tough construction worker. I was like, I kind of figured, okay, I think I'm onto something. Scott offers me something. But again, so it was tough. It was honestly tough. I did look for employment for one summer out of that 9 years. Once I got my G2, there was a couple of my friends working for a guy. So, in the GTA, if you drive 2 hours north, it's like cottage country. It's like, New York and the Hamptons. Okay. We've got multi-million-dollar cottages, on islands. That's where a lot of like hockey players and athletes, that's where they go. That's where they got places. And so I had an opportunity to go work for this guy, work on the islands, work with all these young guys, shirts off, going for swims, after work, right off the island. And I did that for one summer. And Scott said, he says, you're going to go and you're going to realize that those guys, for lack of a better word, and it's not going to push you and you're going to get bored. And it was true. These guys are, bringing in tall boys in their cooler bags on Fridays and getting it going at first break. And I'm like, I'm not a big drinker. Two, I have like a 2-hour drive home, and I'm not one to push the law. I never have been. But, three, those guys worked. I think they put more time and effort into trying not to work hard than they did just working hard.
Yeah.
So the days during the weeks and the weeks during the months, and I was there for like, started in the summer. I finished up at Christmas, and I'm like, I'm not coming back. I'm out. So I went back to Scott, and he told me. He said, I told you so.
But I think that's common. Like, even the guys I worked for in my first crew, they were seasoned guys, meaning they were probably on the tail end of their career. And I remember, like, they just didn't want to really push. Their drive probably ran out, like, 2 decades ago. And it was like they didn't buy any new tools. There was no, like, thrill to the game anymore that, like, we all talk about. It was just dead. I remember we let one guy go, Tom Woodruff. Tom Woodruff was a character. He won the lottery like every other month, but never had the winnings. Like, he'd always have a story to come to work with. Like, get me like, yeah, I bought a Harley.
Give it up for Tom.
Yeah, I bought a Harley, and where's the Harley? Oh, it's down the Cape. Like, we never saw the Harley that he bought, but it was like, but I remember,
okay.
I remember when our boss Tommy let him go. I was standing at the bottom of the ladder, and like we had stripped off this thing. We were in West Roxbury, stripped off like the gable end, and Tom had I don't know why he had told him that he was done at the end of the day. You get me? Like, he told him early in the day, he's like, today's your last day, blah, blah, but he let him keep working. And I never understood that kind of mentality. And I remember Tom coming down, and he's like eyeballing all the scrap wood that fell off the building that he's just stripped off with nails sticking out. And he's eyeballing it, and I'm literally watching this at like 19. And he's just working his way down so he can jump off the ladder and put his foot through a nail. So it's a workman's comp clause. Like he had seen everything, and he was just like, this is just the system. I'm just working it. So like there was no, like I said in the last podcast, like if you get done like 10 days early on this job, then 10 days early the next job, you might get an extra job in at the end of the year. These guys were just like, it's a year. It's another year. So I can see what you're saying. Like when you get with those crowds, maybe Scott wasn't so bad, you know?
No, in retrospect, he's really not. And, we took a few years off, just because, well, once I started, we didn't take a few years off at first, but once I went on my own, I was too afraid to just go on my own. So I moved abroad for a year. So it was like the perfect transition. Listen, I'm going away. I'll be back in a year if things change. And he knew right away. He's like, you're not coming back. He's like, you're going to come back and you're going to be my competition. And I was like, no, I'm coming back. But Scott was the kind of guy. He was like, came back. My phone's ringing because Scott was referring me to do jobs out of districts that he didn't want to drive to anymore.
He's solid.
And Scott would help me price. Scott would help me price my jobs for that first year. And then I think I pulled back from Scott for probably 2 or 3 years because it's like, like I had this confidence, right? I think I was 25 at the time. My phone started ringing, but Scott is a solid guy. Absolutely. And
what was he doing to keep you there? You worked for him for 8 or 9 years. Was it pay? Obviously, then you had good jobs that you enjoyed doing, but what was he doing to keep you on board? Because it sounds like even when you had an idea to leave, he's like, you're going to be back. What was he offering you other than keeping you mentally occupied and like giving you the challenge that you needed to have you stick around for so long?
He was offering me only that the mental stability, the challenge. He offered me the realization that I was doing work above and beyond any of my peers in my community. The pay was not a thing. I mean, I got paid $12 an hour out of high school. That lasted until I think I was 19. Maybe I got $13 or something. But for 9 years, I started at 12, guys. I ended with Scott at 24, 25. And I ended at Scott at $18 at 24, 25. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I grew up in a small town. Scott wasn't really part of the community. He was, he worked a lot, so he wasn't at the things or what was going on in community events or whatever. But I think, when I would monitor the way he would work, the way he would handle a nail, the way he would hit a nail, the way he would pull a nail, the way he would handle a piece of wood, it was very similar. A good comparison is like watching an NHL player shoot the puck or just pick up the puck. Like one simple little movement, it's like, it's effortless, it's artistic, it's like a natural part of it. And I've always pushed myself to become very good at everything I do. I'm kind of really hard on myself. And I thought if I can learn what Scott does and apply it to my own company, I'm going to be better off than Scott, because I truly felt I was a better person than Scott, because he wasn't a nice person. I missed out on a lot of really cool things that 20-year-olds don't often miss out on, like, festivals and concerts and, beach party stuff. I'd work 3 Saturdays in a row, and then it's like, I bought my $60 ticket to go to, this festival, Wakestock, a wakeboarding music festival. And, he knew, like, I asked him a month in advance. He's like, well, I work Saturdays, for sure. And it came down to like that Friday before. And he's like, you're not going to work Saturday. You want to work in this industry and work 5 days a week. You're going to be a bum like the rest of them. Like he would say these things, When I was younger, out of high school, 17, 18, I would come home to tears. And, because I'm like, these people are too mean. These are too rough. So Tyler, to answer your question, what did he offer me? He offered me a challenge. He offered me the opportunity to do something that I knew was bigger and better than the rest of the construction community that I saw around me. And I mean, it helped that I truly was magnified to the trade itself. I fell in love with it. It's creative. It offered me kind of all those things. What I needed to be happy. I enjoy working with wood. I enjoy building things. The gratification of seeing something.
But do you think some of that was consistency that he offered you? Like, I think when I was in the business at that age, it was someone that always had work, because there was a lot of guys that were hot and cold, and if you knew like this guy always had work, always hammering through it, instead of just throwing money away on booze or chicks, there was something about that consistency, knowing, hey, I will be able to come back, whether it's every summer or just have that. Like, I had a run for 7 years with my guy. And I think I ended at 12, $18, whatever it was. And I was like, he gave me a bump every year, but it was just a little bit. I didn't know any better because he got me in high school. So it was just like, I felt okay. I didn't spend money. I spent money on tools. I didn't do anything. I worked, at the rink. I was either buying hockey stuff or buying CDs back in the day. That was it. So it just, I don't think he took advantage of me. I think I definitely got, how do I want to say this? I think I took away more than what the paycheck had to offer, meaning with experience. So, but the consistency I saw was that, hey, he's always got work. It was never, because I know a lot of the other guys I worked with, they'd always be asking, like, when we got to like the 3/4 point or the 85% through the project, they'd be like always going to Tom going, hey, what's next? I never asked that because I just assumed that the ignorance is that there's always going to be something coming in. But the other guys were always like, what's next? What's next? And if Tom didn't answer them right then, or say, hey, it's going to be this address, whatever, those guys would literally start looking for jobs. Like, it was, there was not, it was, so I always thought the consistency part is what I took away from, Tom always being hot and cold, similar to your boss, Scott, but it was like the consistency was there. So I think that's
the consistency was definitely there. There was one season that he was slow. We framed all year. The winter we'd come inside, we'd do some trim stuff, whatever. Work for his friends, doing their renovations. And when we were slow, we work at his house. So I sanded his deck down. Like I built this deck and stained it. And 3 years later, I sanded the whole freaking thing down. He kept me busy. I was never out of work working for Scott. So I got paid the less out of all of my friends. They were making, when I was getting 18, my friends were like hitting that $30 an hour mark, but they were out of work all the time. So it's an average throughout the year. That is a huge
At what point did you know that you wanted to eventually start your own company? Was it, how far into working for him?
It was actually very early on. So when I was 17 and I was working in the restaurants and working for him, in about 6 months' time, I burnt out. I got tired because, nights and weekends at the restaurants and the construction site. And when I decided to quit the restaurant, I also decided that I wanted to, go with Scott like full-time mentally, because he could offer me an apprenticeship. And the same decision was made that I'm gonna be a business owner at that time when I was 17. I saw Scott, what Scott was building. I saw his house, and I thought, I could do this. I like this. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And like I said, my motivation was, I'm going to do it better than Scott, because, I felt I had a personality to add to what Scott did. So I was 17 and I knew what I wanted. From that point, it was just, big pictures take big time. And, I got licensed at 23, but I wasn't about to rush out the door.
So do you think that you stayed with him? Obviously, you said that you stayed with him because he was teaching you stuff, but there had to have been a point where you knew, you basically got all that you were going to get from him. Was that your point where you're like, all right, I'm going to break loose on my own? Or was it not to like, it almost like, I feel like there's a lot of parallels to myself where you got done school and you were going to get into the food industry. And I feel like your father probably saw that it was like a comfort, like an easy route for you to take. You could just fall into that and go that path. But then you jumped and you took another direction. And then I feel like if you're the same type of, it seems like you're very similar to myself, that you got to a point where you probably could have just been like, hey, I can do this on my own, but it was a comfortable situation and that probably scared you some. Do you think that you got to a point where you could have broke loose before, or you were still learning on his dime, or you just weren't ready to take that jump?
I wasn't ready. I always felt too young. I felt too immature. I felt people looked at me like, looking young and looking inexperienced. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't as much waiting, or jumping at the bit to get out of there. I mean, I was, the work was there. I was taking it. What it came down to was an opportunity for me to move abroad. And when I thought about my life in a year break, moving abroad, coming home, that was the real question. Like, am I going to come home 26 years old or 25 years old? Am I going to come home 25 years old? And am I going to go work for Scott? And if so, how long? And I didn't see it. And so I was doing side work for maybe a year or so before I moved abroad. I moved to Australia. And, Scott never, he was supportive of side work and stuff, but what am I trying to say here? I guess when I imagined coming back from Australia, I didn't imagine working for Scott. I thought, this is my break. This is a way I can break up with Scott, because every good relationship, when you leave that relationship, it's a breakup. I didn't leave Scott. Like, we broke up. It sucked. It was hard. I was sad. So yeah, to answer your question, I mean, before I left Scott, I never thought I was ready to leave Scott. And when I came home from Australia, I still didn't feel I was ready. So I grew a beard to look older, and it was a patchy ass beard, man.
Dude, I was going to ask you that exact question, because I remember when I first started my company, and it was the same thing. I felt too young, and I felt when people looked at me because I looked young that I was inexperienced, and I remember losing jobs because of that. And that's exactly why I grew a beard. And
well, you can get side work. I was just thinking the same thing when Jeff was talking, was that I don't remember when I never thought I'd be ready, because I feel like everyone that was at the building department, because I would go and like do runs or whatever, or go to the lumber yard, there was never anyone that was my age that was like their name was on the truck. They were always the runner. So It wasn't like you had someone else. Like nowadays, there's a lot of younger guys running their own gigs, but it like Jeff was talking, it was taking me back to those days, and I'm like, there was no one that was like, I can be that guy. I could totally be that guy. Everyone I was looking up to was like 45 to 60, and I was in my early 20s, so it was like, it didn't even cross my mind. I mean, I think I wrote down what my company name should be. I did everything but leave, and it sprung for me, to answer Tyler's question for me, it was that he was 63, and he was like, you know what, guys, we were waiting for our Christmas bonuses. Like, what do you think it's going to be? Blah, blah, maybe $500. And he was just like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. I'm done running around. Like, I just want to smoke weed and like just chill. That was his thing. Like, and it's not going to lie to you. That was his, there was a blunt in the ashtray, then it was going to be a good week. And it was that turning point. Like, that's what it took. It took me to get kicked out onto the street. And I was like, all right, I went to go pick up all my tools, because you acquired tools. He never asked me to, but to make my life easier was I'll buy a new chop saw for myself so I can do side gigs and get my day-to-day done early. But then when I went to pick up all my gear, all those people were like, they know who did the work. Like, who was there? I wanted to ask you while you were talking was the hours you were putting in, because I feel like Scott would have shaped you, would be like, instead of being like, again, correct me, 8 to 3 or whatever it was like start time to whenever you wanted to get the task finished that day, and then you then take on the next task tomorrow. Like if it was standing walls, let's stay till dusk. It wasn't 3 o'clock, it was dusk to get the last wall stood. And I think that breeds that whole, ownership part, meaning you're not just a time punching in, punching out. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, you're totally right. It was 8 to 5 every day, but within the day there were goals. And he wasn't always vocal with his goals, but the goal was, at the end of the day, when you're looking at the clock, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're in the middle of something, you're getting that done. Yeah. You're not leaving a wall half down, unsheeted. You'd get the wall done, and it's ready to lift first thing in the morning. That's, you don't leave. that's a pet peeve of mine. And I mean, if you talk to any one of my crew members, they'll attest. I can't stand walking in a job site in the morning of someone else's job site and you see it. It's like, did you guys work all night? Like, you look like you're in the middle of something. Am I late? Because this wall's half built. But it's like, oh no, you left it from the day before. It's like hacky. Going back to, if you don't mind, and I want to ask your guys' opinion about, this has to touch on Tyler's question to do with, my age and did I feel ready to go on my own and such. But do you guys see a much younger group of people starting companies nowadays compared to when we were working for companies? Johnny, you said in the municipal offices, you saw everyone's like in their 45s, mid 40s. But nowadays, if you go into the city of Toronto, you're going to see a bunch of mid 30s. But I feel like when I was working for Scott, everyone was older. Yep. I didn't see a lot of young employers on the job sites I was on. There was a lot of 40 to 60-year-old employing younger guys. And then I feel as though I personally feel around the GTA, the greater Toronto area, I felt like I was one of the younger guys when I started my company because everyone was old and they were kind of in their 60s. And then the turnover happened. I feel like I was kind of ahead of the game. And I might be talking about my ass because I know there's a lot of young guys who started similar time than me. But I think, my example comes from in high school. They pushed us to university. They didn't tell us that.
But I think this has I think there's a couple of sides to this, and I think there's definitely a lot more younger guys starting companies. But I also think that we're just, we're able to consume that because they're like everyone's business is everyone's business now, especially with social media. And this isn't about social media, but the fact that like you're engulfed in other lives. Like before, even when I started my company. I felt like I was the only guy that was my age that had my company. And then all of a sudden social media became this thing. And it's like, wait a second, there's like 20 of us around here. And before it was like, I would only know about the contractor that was working on the house next to me or that lived down the street from me. Now I know about 75 different contractors that all work within the same area. And it's just more relevant because we're exposed to it. So I talk about like, to relate this, we had a conversation with my plumber the other day about, he was talking about how he needed to hire someone, and he doesn't want to hire anyone that's under 25 because they're all lazy. And I said, well, the only reason you're saying that is because you're seeing more lazy people. Your generation had just as many lazy people. You just didn't see them. And it's just because we're able to, again, see everyone's business. So I think it's the same thing here is that, there's definitely more younger guys. And I think that's being shaped by the fact that we're exposed to more younger guys doing it and seeing that as an obtainable goal.
Well, I think you nailed it with social media. Social media has it's a magnet to the same type of people come to you. Like the comments you get and the people that open your eyes up to their business,
right?
They see similarities in you. There's probably a handful of 40 to 60-year-olds that DM me, and then I'm thinking about just like if I walk in the building department, I don't run into a 30-something-year-old with me. It is still the 60-year-olds. But I'm also now going against developers where these guys have seasoned money. And I honestly, I know it's the same exact game for me right now. Like I'm walking into rooms and I'm bidding against guys that have a way bigger Rolodex and WAD than me. So I am the younger version of those guys. Like they're all, again, 60, 70-year-olds. And I am the younger guy that's there, but I do think you're right. I think social media, the people that we attract on this to answer questions it's the same age.
Yeah,
I think as long as you see it like that, Johnny, there's always a reason to push. Maybe that's just the way you see it in your perspective. You're always choosing that. You know what I mean? Like social media aside, like to your point, Nick, the only other contractors you would see are the other trades on the job site or on the neighboring job sites. But like before social media was, as it is today. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe it was the same, in the 80s with the 60-year-olds talking. You know what I mean? Like the grandfathers talking about our fathers. Like who knows?
But I think it was tough.
I feel like
sorry.
I feel like especially with the whole entrepreneurial push right now, there's definitely more younger people starting their companies. I think, there's a lot of knowledge out there that it wasn't so easy to learn, whether it's products, whether it's knowledge. It's like a lot of what I do is self-taught, and it's because of books or forums or social media, whatever it may be. And I don't think that was the case, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then there's like the whole entrepreneurial push. But I also think that another big thing is probably pay. If you had some experience and you could make $18 an hour, or you could start your own, like when I started my own company, I'm thinking, I'm going to charge $35 an hour. That's more than all my friends are making. But then at the end of the year, I'm not making any money. There's no money in my bank account. And like the thought of being able to make more money, there's not that many people who are going to hire you with 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience and say, hey, I'm going to pay you $100,000 a year to work in construction. So I feel like a lot of people, instead of going to work for somebody now or working for somebody for a couple of years, to just say, I'm going to start my own company because I need to make more money than this. The cost of living is so much higher now than when our parents were growing up. So I think that it probably also has something to do with it, that so many people aren't going to be able to pay somebody a rate for them to survive on their own. So what are you going to do? Keep doing that? Are you going to keep making $18, $20 an hour forever? Or are you going to start your own gig and start making money?
I also think it was harder. I also remembered that the reason why I wanted to learn as much as I could and did like sheet metal and plumbing on the side is because when I first started my business, guys would walk right by me. There wasn't like a plumber that was my age that I could call and he'd be on my crew. It was all older guys, and you'd call them and they'd meet me at the job site. You'd meet them, I'd come out of like my truck and they'd walk right by me. Like I was just the kid on the job site. And it was a different atmosphere, meaning these guys just did not respect you. Like they just knew that from your age, your look, you had not put in enough time, so they didn't want to put time into you. And it was such an uphill battle to get any guys to respect you enough to actually do the work. And it was very, very tough back then for me to get plumbers, HVAC guys, electricians, and it was a nightmare. And I think that has changed, where I feel like a lot of the subs that we have on, I do have some older guys there, but I do also have a whole stream of my age guys in the business, where when I first started, like when I first did my first house, I bought a trailer, I had all my tools in one half of it, and I had a little office in the front, and I'd always call people to come over, and they would be like, where's the boss? I'm like, you're looking at him. And they'd be like, no, really, where is he? And it was like I had to do 20 minutes of that. And then you had to basically drench them with knowledge about the job for them to actually listen to you. It'd be like, no, this is this. You have to talk facts without having the drawings and without having, like, nowadays I think a lot of people use drawings as like the crutch. And I'll tell people to do that. If you don't know the business and you're a developer, invest in a good set of drawings that's your contract if you don't know the business. But a lot of guys would be like, so what do you think of this? Like I have had bosses over the years that didn't know enough, and they'd be like, so tell me how you'd work your HVAC around this. Back in the day, the old guys would be like, see ya, and they just walk away. I'm not going to educate you on what to do so then you can then go bid pedal me to somebody else. Right. So there was a different crowd on both ends of the spectrum where it was just really tough to get guys. And then once you got them, you sold them, and then we didn't have – I had Lowen Electric. He was my guy forever. And it wouldn't change. Once you got that trust, you wouldn't have 2-3 crews like you have now. It was
What was his name?
Lowen.
Oh, I thought you said Low End Electric. I was like, that's a really
that's a great name.
Good name. Set the expectations.
Yeah, Lindsay Low Ends.
Set the expectations extremely low.
And I bumped into him a couple years ago, and he was like, "Holy crap, man!" Because it's funny to meet these guys where now I just wear a tape measure on my hip, where everyone makes fun of me. But he remembers me back when I used to swing a hammer like day in and day out and just be a grunt guy. It's funny to see those guys. Like my plasterer, Diego. Yeah. Diego remembers me back when I used to swing a hammer. So it's funny that he's like, he's seen it.
I still, some of my subs that I work with and use are still the guys that would be on the jobs when I used to work for Scott, that have known me since I was like 17. Like my electrician, he's 65. He's known me forever.
Yeah.
So when I came into business, I came in with a small group of trades that, already knew me, number one. And, they took my calls, they took my jobs because they respected me based on what they saw me do with Scott. And I'm not talking about, scale of work or anything like that, but that I was a worker.
Hustle.
I was there to do the work, and I was there to do the work well. And, I remember that in the first few years, it's like, I had to work harder and overcompensate, and, but these guys would sideline me and be like, dude, like, you're doing well. And meanwhile, I'm concerned about what they think about me, what they think about my operation in comparison to these builders we were working for under Scott. But, it's, it is cool to still have those relationships with those old guys who have known you forever. Your work in this industry, your work speaks for you. It really does. Talk is cheap, and
Absolutely.
All day. You're only as good as your last house. I don't care if you built 70. Your last house could be junk, and that's really what sticks with everybody. So it's...
So what's the scope of your projects? I mean, all of basically everything that I see is framing. Are you doing entire houses? You have an electrician, like, are you doing fit outs and everything else from start to completion?
Okay, so Harvey Homes and Interiors, we're full service project management, start to completion, but one house a year, one custom home a year. And we're not doing big homes yet. I would love to one day, but I'm still growing to get there. Full management, renovation additions. Not all the ones you see we're framing on are my management. Framing is the bread and butter of this company. It's the backbone. That's my background. That's what I teach, all the guys that you see, and Molly, that's what you see us doing. We're framing. All the fundamentals that we learn and we focus on is based around custom framing. And then we take those skills, they're transferable to a point, and we focus on wood siding, interior trim on our own projects. It's very rare that I'll bid on someone, a builder's project to do trim. I don't feel I'm competitive enough. I'm not, competitive enough with a full-time trim carpenter. I take too long to produce what my competition would produce in a lot less time, and therefore I can't do it within that market value. So we do interior trim projects on our own. But yeah, so framing is the bread and butter, and that's what really gives me the opportunity to focus on building a framing crew and kind of stepping out of it and building a business that's going to be that's full service project management.
Your goal is to be more of a project management firm, or always to have this framing crew as well?
So always to have it. It's kind of two companies, and my whole reasoning behind it, the new challenge. We can frame 1 million houses over 30 years, whatever it is, dome ceilings, steeper roofs, the fundamentals are there. Project management, I feel like it's always, especially right now in my career at this point, it's a challenge that I'm still learning, still harnessing. And the importance behind keeping the framing crew is, I think a lot of the best builders come from a trade background. There's exceptions to that, of course, but if you can learn how to build a house and whatever, and you kind of learn those, you want to build a whole house, you can do it. So my goal is for the project management side to be able to offer opportunity to the guys who put in their time and effort in the framing side. So, there's a market value for pricing a house to frame it. I can't afford to build a crew of framers, all paid top dollar, I can't afford it. I mean, you build a house faster, you're out of work, and framing is a young man's game. So once we hit our 40s, framing becomes really tough on the body. And so rather than just build a framing crew like what Scott did and break down, because Scott's not framing anymore. He took a project management, a supervisor position for a great builder, because it's, he didn't really think ahead. And my thought ahead is to build a business that'll offer all the guys opportunities. So, my brother-in-law works with us. He's been with us for 9 years since I started. And, and James Haslam, the Pit Viper. Those guys now, they're running crews, framing crews on their own. And then now I'm starting to, have them oversee, maybe a neighboring property that we're doing, a full addition on the back, full project management. But we know the trades, we know the plumbers, the electricians. It's literally them going, letting them in the morning, them going, closing up at night, making sure everything's clean, going over, doing any modifications, kind of doing that general contracting service for that, and then hopping back to their crew and framing the house. So the whole idea is to create opportunity for all of the employees to find their successes in their life, without having to go out and start their own company. And guys will want to start their own company. My heart will get broken multiple times throughout my career. But for those guys who see more than an hourly wage in their life, but they don't want to take on a company, I want to be able to offer that opportunity to say, okay, I told James, if you want a Lambo, let me know now, because I'm going to have to figure this one out. If you don't want to go on your own, you want a Lambo, we got to figure this out together.
I'm so glad that you approached that on your side. I feel like so many owners wait till someone asks for something. You talked about this a couple of times, is that you being aggressive like that opens the door to that transparency that,
Absolutely.
He might say, hey, maybe it's just a Civic, a kick-ass Civic that he wants, but that you're willing to do that. Yeah, I mean, that speaks volumes about how you treat not just your, projects, but your employees. That's huge.
Yeah, I think, I've interviewed a fair share of guys, and it's like some of the guys that work for me now and some that don't, but anytime financials come up, it's always like, if we can't afford to bring someone on for a certain rate that they're looking for, I always say to them, all right, let's map that out. Maybe we can't afford that rate now, but let's map it out. If you want to make $200,000 a year, it's how do we get there? Is it possible? Or I'm using 200,000 as an extreme, but the Lamborghini reference, but having that conversation rather than just going right to the quick answer of, no, you can't, you'll never have a Lamborghini, you're framing houses.
But it's so tough to be on the other side of that. I asked my last boss, I was like, I want to make $346,000 a year. Can I do that here? And it was just because that's what Mike from ECS told me to say. And it was, I was like, but I said
Don't say 347, 346.
And he was just like, no, we can do that. But then he never followed through with the plan. So from on the employee end of it was like, all right, when Tyler, you asked, when do you leave, Jeff? That's obviously flares go up, pop smoke. It's obvious that after a couple months of not coming through on whatever plan it was, there is no plan.
Right.
I'm just going to take advantage of, I think a lot of owners do that. I mean, I don't think any of us do, but I have been on the wrong side of it where you get taken advantage of with your hard work. I mean, Jeff, you did, topping out at $18 an hour. There was a point where you're, sponging up knowledge, stopped, and you then got taken advantage of because of hard work. Where if you had asked for 22, 24, he may have said no and then grabbed two more young guys that he could then break in. I think that's a huge thing to think about, is that how do you not take advantage of it? Like Benny didn't want to be owner of Vintage Builders, but I've been promised so many companies over the years that I see in Benny what the promise that I saw myself back. That sounds ridiculous, but that he shouldn't just walk into this going, all right, I just want a job. I want to have to buy him out in 5, 10, 20 years. I cannot wait to cut that check. Because I know what he puts in, and he puts in the same mentality that an owner would. And every owner should do that. And I'm happy to do that with him. And he'll say it to anyone. He's like, I didn't want it. I don't want this. And I'm like, I cannot wait to cut that check if that ever comes down that road. Because he deserves it.
My favorite day of the week is?
Payday.
Cutting the checks. My favorite day is paying the guys. I love it. I do this little psycho, mental calculation where I can imagine what's in each one of their bank accounts. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's getting good. Oh, so-and-so saving up. I love it. Baker, he's been with us for 9 years. He bought his first house. He got married. He started a family. He bought his second house under the company. Next guy up, he's going to buy a house any day. And I love that. I'm so psyched. We've got another one who's house shopping. And then all the young guys, in their young 20s, it's these are the conversations that Scott never really had with me that I want to talk about it, because that's what I think about. I think about my next house. So if I'm thinking about it, why am I keeping it from the people that I hang out with the most out of anyone else I know? We should, work together and figure out how can we do this. The difference between $18 and $22 an hour, it's not going to change my life. It's not going to change anybody's life. You think it will at that time in your life, but it's not going to change your life.
But letting that dollar value change your opinion on that person, and losing that, the amount of effort you've put into their time that they've been there, and just losing that, making that a void over $2 is ridiculous.
Right.
Like that's the other end of
absolutely.
it is when people go, oh, I'm not going to pay that. Like I've been on that end of it. And it's like, all right, see ya. Having that huge, that void is like $200 an hour if you actually were to put numbers to it.
Yeah, agreed.
Jeff,
I mean, it has to be a mutual, like between employee and employer, it has to be a mutual goal for each one of them individually, but also as.
But do you think that's in our industry?
No.
Like, do you think the people pushing paper, it's mutual? Like, do you think, like, really, beyond where we are?
I mean, we're generalizing pushing paper, but I mean, yeah, I mean, there's definitely companies out there that are so number driven. And it's like, no, you're going to make $29.30 an hour.
Like you're topping out. Like the secretary at the building department?
Right.
Like she's like.
Yeah, I mean, there's always there's always industries like that.
That's it.
But like this talk is new. I think it's refreshing.
Yeah,
but
I mean we preach transparency, right? We talk about it all the time, and that's where it's like with our team, it's like I want this to be transparent. I want us to have this conversation. Like Jeff, you mentioned about your guys buying a house. I remember Mike, one of the first guys I hired. He had a house way outside the city, and he started working for me. And he had the opportunity to buy something that he didn't think he'd be able to afford before, and he bought it, and now he's already like his
Does
wheels
that
are
freak
right.
you out though?
I know
I'm not saying
It doesn't.
I feel like I'm not burdened, but like the same reason why Jeff you stayed with Scott was that you knew you'd have money coming in. Like it's because you saw something in Scott, whether you throw away the bad attitude or the ethics that he had that you didn't agree with then because you were younger and immature. But there's something there that like that the work's coming in. Like we talk about someone wanting to get the Lambo or somebody wanting to get $200,000. Like my end of it is I have to do the math. I have to make sure it's all there. Like that's my burden. So I take it very, very serious that as these people will grow and have families, that is on me to make sure that they get that check where Friday is still fun. Even when the economy sinks or whatever happens, I need to have plans in place because it's my duty. It's like coming here and having a couple ideas for a podcast and it going sloppy is okay. But like this is work. Like what you saw in Scott, where he was able to always drive in nails and get products done. That's key in this industry. It usually was always hot and cold. It wasn't just the unions where you'd be doing something one day and then you might have 2 weeks off and then you'd go, do drywall the next 2 weeks. This industry in a whole was very sporadic. It wasn't always solid.
I would argue that it almost doesn't. I would argue that an hourly wage will not get you rich. And whether it's $18 an hour, $30, $40 an hour, or you're a lawyer billing out at $400 an hour. Okay, there's always overhead. There's always bills. What gets you rich in this life, I believe, is hard work. And what comes with hard work, when you can see the finish line because you work hard, you can take risks. You can calculate risks. So, working at an hourly wage, for me personally, my company, great. It pays for certain things, which is great. But the real successes, my vacations, that kind of stuff, I've made some moves in real estate, like completely outside of my company. And it's like, you take some risks and it's like, those are what pay you. The Modern Craftsman, I can't imagine you guys getting paid or being like, at the end of the month being like, okay, we had Harvey Homes, we had awesome framers. Okay, guys, here's $80 for you, $80 for you, $80 for you. Sweet. It's like, no, there's something bigger to it. You don't know what it is, but you're going to work hard at it because you believe this hard work will pay off in some form. An hourly wage, it makes a living. It doesn't give you success. So you always have to be outside thinking, how can I become successful? Hard work, I believe, will always be the key to that. There's many different vessels to get there. And like I said, a lot of these companies, construction, framing, plumbing, you can't build a crew paying everybody $50 an hour. It doesn't add up because you can't get those jobs. You can't price them competitively. So it's, how do you keep these guys around, when they're getting 18, 20, 21, 22 and have them grow? But like, you have to offer them opportunities or else you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
So, I tell Jay, I can't pay you $50 an hour, bro. Like, I would love to, but it's just, the numbers don't work. So it's up to you to take what you learned, what you've gained in confidence, and make some moves. So buy a house, fix up the basement, throw someone down there, renovate upstairs, do an addition at the side. 6 years later, decide to sell. Holy, made a lot of money. Great. Okay, now do something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's that side hustle. When I was working for Scott, making $14 an hour, but we get a weekend off, I go build a deck. I make whatever it was, $200-300 in a day, and I do 2 days, and it's like, booyah! My extra hard work, that was my success.
Yeah, I think a lot of people misconstrued that as that, well, I do work hard and I do get paid an hourly rate. Why am I not successful? And I think you kind of clarified that well, is that it's outside, like your hourly rate supports your life. But if you're not going to make, whether it's a calculated or just a risk in general, and taking, a risk on yourself or betting against yourself, I mean, that's where, that's that extra hard work. Like you said, trying to build equity into a home, to like one of the biggest things you'll ever purchase in your entire life. I mean, going beyond what is your day to day, and like you said, like the market can only pay so much per job. So,
well, I think part of it, this is where I stumble in my thought process. I think that's why people gravitate towards college and gravitate towards these corporate companies, because the growth isn't 6 steps deep like it is for a carpenter. If I were to just rudimentary look at it, where you go from a laborer to a carpenter, or carpenter's apprentice to carpenter, lead carpenter to whatever, foreman. That's really it. And then your next step nowadays is not master carpenter and going to finish or whatever. It's really own your own company. But if you go into corporate, like I'm thinking as we had this conversation, I had friends that, went to school with me in a business degree or finance or facilities, and they're working their way up so slowly, like every 5 years, stepping up this ladder to get from like 60 to 80 to 90 to 100 to 150. And that does not exist in our industry unless you're an owner of a company. I mean, or you're at like a Toll Brothers or something big like that, where you're managing 600 closings every quarter. I mean, just be honest. I think that's what happens to go into corporate, is that there's more growth.
And in corporate, employees, they're given stakes in the game. So, from the bridge between $100,000 and $150,000 raise, they'll say, okay, here's 5% in share.
Yep.
We're not going to give you, but that, going back to Tyler's original question, am I a framer or are we project managing? I'm trying to figure out how to build this into a business that I can somehow figure that out for the people that I choose to surround myself with. Because I couldn't imagine myself, going to work and hanging out with other people than I currently do. Like, if everyone just up and left, it'd be like, now what? I got to rebuild. And a lot of companies, they run like that, hire and fire. It's a machine. Squeaky wheel, get out, get it replaced. It takes 2-3 guys to get another guy that's as good as the one that left 2-3 guys ago. But I want to, that's part of my goal, is to figure this game out in a way that can offer stakes, offer opportunity to the people who come in wanting to be a carpenter. Being a carpenter, if you want to be a carpenter, fine, be a carpenter, but there's more to it. If you want to be a plumber, be a plumber. But you can be, a plumber and, somehow something else. I don't know. We rely on paying people hourly wages. And so it's really tough for those people. But to figure out a way to make it not tough, to offer opportunity, that is what I rack my brain about like every day.
I'm right with you. Can I go backwards a little bit? And you were with Scott for 9 years, and then you decided to go off on your own. Where does this whole red seal come into play? When you said you got licensed, where did that come in? Did you start your own gig and then get that, or how did that work out? Or can you define it?
No, I got, so that's a credential here you get in Canada. And I got that under Scott. So it was kind of my way to show my parents, look, I'm enrolled in something that's considered a post-secondary education. I go to work every day, but for 2 months of the year, I actually go into a college and we talk shop, we learn theory. And at the end of 5 years, an accumulation of hours and 3 terms of schooling, I sit down to a 4-hour exam that's credited by the country, and you pass it to become a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC tech, a carpenter,
Is that required?
guy. It is not required. So my trade, carpentry, is called a voluntary trade, not required to have a license to open a business, to pull a structural permit. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, it's required to have that license if you want to open a business and pull permits. So carpentry is a voluntary trade.
Did you
not required?
So did you get the red seal to get a bump from Scott?
No, I did.
That's,
like just for myself. Yeah, I wish I did it for myself. He didn't promote it. He just happened to be it, and none of the other guys went through it. I just insisted, and I was like, well, I want to do it. I've got this diploma on my wall, and I don't know, and I promote it because I feel that's the extra. You're a carpenter, but you've graduated post-secondary education. You didn't have to, but you did it. Why? I don't know. To pat myself on the back. I wish it were different. I wish it were different. I wish you needed it to pull a structural permit, but that's not the case.
Yeah. We're required to have a license to pull a permit, but our education is not near that. It's you study how to read the book.
How to cheat.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Exactly.
You tab it, it's 600 pages, and to find where the redundancy is and to find the predecessor or the successor.
You spend $600 to sit in a classroom and they teach you how to tab and highlight the book so you can so you can pass the test.
Sure.
And the fact that there's I feel like the mix of what Canada does and the U.S. does and making it a requirement, but also having that hands-on experience or learning theory behind it, that really is...
It's a missing link.
Yeah, that's the missing link. And I've never heard it called a voluntary trade before, but that's a good way to put it because, our plumbers, electricians, mechanical guys, they're all required to have a certain amount of hours. Yep. Journeyman, lead electrician, etc. But where it's not required for us beyond taking a test and getting a license and paying our dues.
I was at my class, and there was I don't know if they were boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. There was a guy that was there that could not speak or read English, so he brought his female friend with him to kind of work him through the code book. And the code, I was like, this guy's pulling permits? How are we in the same room right now?
Right.
And it just blew my mind which is cool, is that the guy told him to leave. Because it was like, thank God someone's sane here. But they were still there for the first 3 classes. And I'm like, what are they doing?
Yeah, we don't have any sort of testing. You just register and pay a fee.
Yeah.
There's no
Tyler,
standardization.
Do you agree with it? Or is that just if you were to say, hey.
I think that there should be something in to weed out a lot of the people where, hey, it's just this. You could have a pickup truck and a tool belt and start a company. Just get yourself start an LLC and get registered with the Division of Consumer Affairs. The people who want to do things right. The people who are going to try and beat the system are going to beat the system regardless. And you're not going to do anything about that.
Yeah.
But for the people who want to do it right, I jump through all the hoops to do it right. I already do. So I feel like there would be, I don't know. I feel like there would be less in the middle. Like there's always going to be those people who are looking to not pull permits, and the customers who want to get a job done for extremely cheap. There's going to be a market for that no matter what standards or laws or regulations they put into place. But I feel like if there were some sort of standard or testing or certification that you had to do, I feel like it would bring the entire market up, because it would take out that entire like middle of the road where it's like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I could start a company and we're not really doing nice work. We're not paying people good wages to be doing nice work. And I think that it would kind of weed out a lot of the people that do give the industry a bad name.
Agreed. And I think as well, on top of it, we rely on building inspectors to have the final say, to say, okay, this guy isn't qualified, deficiency, fix them, I'll come back. Okay, they've fixed. But how tired must those inspectors be from seeing all of these unqualified people who have no business messing with structural framing, or these voluntary trades? Like they end up letting things go because it's like, okay, this guy's never going to get it, and that looks safe enough.
Close enough.
I think like close enough. I've been back 3 times, and they've rectified this. It's kind of within the gray area. They fixed that. That's okay. This I'm not so happy about, but it's better than it was. And you have building inspectors finishing projects because people are unqualified with these voluntary trades.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think we all have a similar experience. Like building inspectors, generally, like everyone talks bad about them because they show up on the job and they're in a bad mood because
they see so much.
Right, and it's the fact that they're constantly on, both jobs and dealing with guys that they point out a deficiency, and rather than saying, "All right, cool, I'll fix it," it's, "What do you mean?" And they argue. I go into the building department at least once every other week, and I'll stand in line and I watch the 2 guys in front of me fight with the inspector about the fact that he doesn't need to pull that kind of permit because he's only doing this, or you failed me. And I watch them fight, and I'm like, no wonder when I get up to the counter that they don't want to help. Like that's all they do is just fight and come back, and you get to a point where it's like, if someone just fights with you all day, eventually you're just gonna be like, whatever, just do what you want.
Dude, I was there the other day, and there's a guy to my left, and you don't want to like make eye contact, and you're like, you look over at him, and he's just doing his thing, and he's getting his stuff set up. For the record, for the longest time, I wouldn't go into the building department if there was someone already there. Like if there was a waiting list, I would just be like, if there's a couple of people waiting, I would just wait. So I didn't ask a dumb question that everyone, this is just me, that everyone would be like, who is this kid?
Did he just ask?
Yeah, like, really? Why would he do that? So I would spend like an hour there waiting for timing to be right. It's so ridiculous. But it's just,
for someone as confident as you, that's
it took a long time, man. I think there was a quote that I memorized the other day where it was like, it took 10 years to be an overnight sensation. Like to be who you are, it's taken like a lifetime to go through all the crap. But no, I mean, I was in the building department the other day, and the guy walks up and he's like, yeah, so I got all the information for those footings. Didn't speak quite as clearly English as me. And the guy's like, no, well, they got to be Bigfoots. And he's like, no, I think they are. And the inspector goes, did you look at them? He goes, no, I didn't even go by. The guy called me. He's like, so who are you? The inspector says to him, like, did you pull the permit? Did you do the work? Are you on site? And he's like, no. Like, so the guy just literally called him to pull the permit. Didn't even look at the Bigfoots. They could have been, 5-gallon jugs at the bottom of a hole. And the guy's like, no, you need to come back. I almost jumped in and be like, you need an affidavit. Like, that's all he's looking for, the inspector, is an affidavit that whatever you're putting in the ground meets code. Because that's all he cares about. But that conversation was so far off that I was like, I can't even imagine this is what he does all day.
Well, not only fight, but like try to dissect what people are telling them.
Like the angle that they have. Like, what is it that they're trying to weasel out on?
Yeah.
And think about the demographic they're dealing with, the rough and tough construction workers.
Yeah.
Everyone's on defense mode.
Right.
Yeah. Very true.
I had an inspector the other week. Who, I mean, I usually don't have any issues. Our job site's clean. We're not trying to get away with anything, so there's usually no issues. But there are those few inspectors who just either have a chip on their shoulder or come in. So he failed us for something at Ruff's, and I wasn't there. Steve was there, and Steve kind of is there as a body at that point, doesn't necessarily know exactly what's going on. So he's not going to like bring up anything code wise. So I spoke with the plumber and was like, let's get set up. He wanted an air test on the gas line. I was like, let's get set up so that we can have a gauge on there, get the air test, final inspection, like at Ruff. It's on an open access basement, so it doesn't matter. And the guy came in and I was like, hey, yes, so we're all set up. Hopefully you don't have to make a separate trip out to do a final. You can just pass the Ruff and the final. And he's just like, no, I can't do that. And I was like, all right, this is going to be good. And it was one of those things where, like, there was no reason why he couldn't pass both of them, except as the conversation kind of progresses, he tells me that he gets paid for every trip that he has to come out. So, like, he'll come out 100 times because he gets paid every time. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, there's a point there where you're just creating work so that you have work. You know, you could make my life easier, the homeowner's life easier, the plumber's life easier, and go through all this, and you don't have to. There's no need to do that. There's a gauge on there. There's an air test. All I have to do after you read the air test on the gauge is open up a valve there and a valve at the stove, and everything's functioning. It's just like, no, I can't do that. So then he goes down to the basement and fails for something that he didn't pick up on the initial inspection. So I only got failed for an air test. And then he's like, oh, well, this can't be like that too. And so I'm like, all right, now you're failing me for something that you already passed. And now you're saying that it doesn't pass. And the air test is good. It doesn't make any sense to me. And he's like, well, you know, there's right and there's wrong, and I'm not going to argue with you. And I said, I don't want to argue with you either. Code is code, but if you're coming out and you have like these blinders on where you only see an air test and you call me for an air test and there's another issue that you completely miss, and then you're coming out for a Ruff and then you want to come back for another final and you're telling me that you'll come out 100 times because you get paid each time, I do kind of have an issue with that.
He's creating work for himself.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to make everyone's life harder because of that. And I mean, I have an issue with that. I also have an issue where inspectors do come out and they don't give you the time of the day, whether they're frustrated or not. We're here. We're doing the best job we can. I'm not trying to cut corners. You know, Jeff, you're probably not trying to cut corners. I highly doubt on your jobs that you're like, you know what? Code calls for a nail in every hole of those hangers, but you can't see the two holes on the top, so just don't do it. You know, like we'll say, like nobody's doing that. So when a inspector comes out and just doesn't want to help you out or doesn't want to work with you, and you're not trying to get away with something, I have an issue to that too.
Yeah, no, I always think, every inspection, there's always one thing, because I think that one thing is an inspector telling you, you're good at your job, but I'm also good at my job. So, you know, go put another piece on that point load. And you know what I mean? They always have one. I always say there's always one thing, and it's as minute as it may be. It's them saying you're good at your job, but I'm good at my job. So go do this one thing. It's like, yeah, okay.
Dude, right. Every inspection I go to.
Also, at the same time, they're like, hey, listen, you're good for that. Take a picture of that and text it to me. Here's my cell phone.
Yeah,
you know,
they do that here
I'm
too.
not going to fail you for it now to create work for themselves or to kind of just set the tone and make your life harder. I don't think that's necessary. You don't pass an inspection and then your subs get bumped and schedules get bumped with something like that where you want to make yourself known, that's fine. But at the same time, you don't have to make everyone's lives harder. Do that to the guys that you walk onto their job that you found them with no permits pulled. You know, the guy remodeling a bathroom that doesn't have any go give them a hard time and then make sure that everything's because when you're walking my job, there's no way that you're going to catch every single thing. So if in good faith, we're doing what we have to do and trying our hardest, you just shouldn't bust our stones. Work with us just like we're willing to work with you guys.
Sounds like your inspector came from the office that Johnny was at before.
Probably. Honestly, I've had really no issues with inspectors. There's been two, and the one is just, okay, this is what this guy does, and his reasoning for it is he doesn't want any liability. So if there's anything that's any different than the plans, he wants it as built from the architect signed off, and he won't give you the time of day. He just doesn't want anything to come back on him, which I do get to a certain extent. But there's times where it's like, hey, we opened this up and this wasn't the way that it was drawn, but it's fixed correctly. And you don't necessarily need to make me get the architect to come out and not pass inspection for an as-built on something minor like that. But then this other guy was basically just like, I don't want to do 2 inspections at once, and I want another trip out here so I get paid for another trip. And to me, that's just a little bit of an issue.
Yeah. And that liability you mentioned is part of the reason why I wish my trade were not voluntary. And I wish it were credited and looked upon. I joke with the guys. So here's an example. If we've got joists or rafters or anything sitting in hangers, hanging off a beam, we'll put the hangers in after unless there's an area you won't be able to get to, but we nail them off fully, And it's like, imagine a world where, you're credited to be deemed qualified or professional enough where you're exempt from using hangers because you've been taught the method on what nails, how many nails, and how to properly nail a floor joist to a beam or a ceiling rafter or, something along those lines. Because these, I feel, hangers, they've been around for a long time, but to the point where they are right now and hanger nails, it's kind of like a millennium thing, kind of the 2000s. Those things really came into play a lot more mainstream than they were. I know everyone's peeling off hangers from the 60s and stuff. It's really thick galvanized, but it's, imagine that.
Well, they're building products that replace, common sense or knowledge. It's like here's a product that simplifies this process that now anyone can do it. And now it's to a point where it's like, all right, we've created a product to make your job easier, so you don't need to know how many nails and what kind of nails to toenail a floor joist off. And now people are fighting that and well, now I'm going to do that half-assed. And it's like, and then someone will come out with a hanger.
Look, conventional framing is kind of, it's changed. It's fast growth, so everything's going engineered, and with engineered comes hangers. Regardless if they're necessary, the engineering company is going to make money off those fasteners, so they're going to add in those details.
My point is, to Tyler's inspector insisting on coming back for a redundant inspection, imagine Tyler could say, listen, man, here's my credentials that I pay for annually. And this pulls a liability off you to say, listen, pass me now. I'll send you the picture. It's okay. It's part of my credentials to say that I'm qualified, trustworthy. And like Tyler, I imagine your jobs that you look around, it's like, okay, the inspector should say, I'm not going to have to come back because I can see the quality of work you're doing. But if you have that extra little piece to say, I am qualified and I will adhere, by the oath that I took in carpentry, whatever.
It's funny. I would love that.
Yeah, I agree, because a lot of times they are trusting people to do that. They're taking somebody's word for it. And it usually doesn't happen on the first trip, and you work with those inspectors enough and they do trust you. But there is nothing formal that's saying, hey, I'm waiving you of this liability, short of I'm going to get my architect to sign off on this. But there should be something where you hold yourself accountable enough, other than just, hey, look at my site, this is the type of work. If an inspector tells me to do something and leaves, hey, you can close everything up, but throw some fire blocking or some rock wool up in that one chase before you close it up. There's never going to be a time where I'm like, hey, Steve, he passed us. Don't worry about throwing that up in there. Like, just do it. It doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't do that. And I think right now, a lot of times everyone is getting treated the same. You know, it's across the board. They're going to have a steadfast rule. Every contractor is the same. I don't want any liability. Everything's on me. If something happens, it's my rear end. And like you said, even with nailing off your joists or your rafters completely, if you're trained in a way that you know that it's nailed and you don't need a hanger, but code's requiring you to put all of these hangers in, it's redundant. Now you're nailing off properly and you have to use a hanger.
Yeah, I mean, out near us, it's 100% liability. So if you don't have your paperwork, you're not even getting that inspection to come out and do that. Meaning you have to go there and submit. We do it quickly on our stories, how we have engineers come out and pin footings. And there's so much liability in the towns that, I mean, I work in Wellesley, that everyone's a lawyer. Everyone's going to complain that, like, there's not enough drainage. My basement's now flooding, even though it's not, just because they want to have something to say. And, you know, the house isn't right in the right spot because now it looks better than their house that's next door. There's always an angle, and the building department 100% wants nothing to do with it. And they can't afford the liability because the numbers we're talking about are ridiculous. So they won't even come out unless you've submitted through the secretary at the desk all this paperwork.
So then why even have a building department? Why aren't you guys just like, you're paying private engineers and everything else? Why don't you have your own inspectors? Why is the building department collecting tax money on it if they don't want any sort of liability?
Because you just said it. They're collecting tax money.
Exactly.
It's a revenue stream for them.
So now it costs people more money. Like, if you have to get an engineer out, the engineers knows more than the building department does. So
but they're making you do it.
If they don't. I get it, but the building department shouldn't even have their hands involved with it if they want zero liability. What are they doing?
But who's regulating it?
Get your own private inspectors. Like, what's the building department doing? It's like, get your own private inspection team. You have an engineer coming out. There's an engineer stamp on it. That's more than the building department that doesn't care. Like, we want to basically absolve ourselves of any of this responsibility. So now you have an engineer stamping something that's saying that. It's silly. It's a complication in the process and costing people more time and money.
And the same reason why there's an appraisal office. It's that they want to know when the permit's closed out, so then the appraiser can come out and reassess it, so then they can get more taxes for it. There's part of this that it's a bigger picture than what we can change. I look at it like there's only three people I don't argue with: referees, cops, and engineers. It is what it is. Like, I got to live with it. And my kind of gauge on it is, I might be doing this for 24 years. Every time it's inspection day, I make sure that my inspector knows I have a notebook in hand, open, pen ready. As we walk around and I follow him, I have a flashlight in my phone. Wherever he can't see, I'm flashing it so I'm not hiding anything. And anything he wants done, I'm writing it down and I'm texting it to my guys in front of him real time, so he knows he's validated and he's important. Regardless if it's my 50th inspection with the same guy, I'm going to show him value regardless, because I know that's part of the game. And if I go in there and go, hey, everything's good. Like, the day I drop sheetrock before I've got my installation inspection, even though it's just the way it timed out, he's going to go in there going, all right, he thinks he's good to go 100%. I'm going to teach him a lesson. And it's just how the game is gone. I think it's always how it's been. But I think there's too many cowboys out there that are just doing stuff like undersized, and that's where it came from, is that guys weren't looking at how you build decks and what the spans are in the code book, and they were just putting stuff up, and then the town didn't want to have the liability for that, approving it, having some guy have a bad day where he was in a conversation and just signed it because he knew the guy, because it happened, and then that deck failed, and then the town is now liable for it. So now they're making engineers liable for it for insurance-wise. I mean, that's kind of the root of all of it.
Yeah. So I want to change the subject a little bit here.
Oh, dig in.
So we're on with Jeff Harvey with Harvey Homes and Interiors, And Jeff, you got hurt recently, and on Instagram, it
Created a buzz.
created a big buzz.
Good buzz.
And I always hate when like an accident happens or something bad happens to make a reaction, but that is the world we live in when we very much react to things. And you chose to be transparent and to kind of put your pride aside and talk about this on a very serious matter. And I think it's important to dig into it a little bit, especially because it is so relevant now, but it's also something that a lot of us, kind of turn a blind eye to a lot on our projects, which is safety and how it's, regulated, and how, OSHA is bad, and
Well, how you personally regulate it as well.
right. So
We did get some DMs on this as well.
So
Awesome.
I guess first off, what happened?
So I took a fall off the main floor through the basement stair hole down onto the crushed stone, 9 feet down. So 8-foot foundation, with the stone there, plus the 11 7/8 joist, 9 feet to my back. What happened was I let my guard down, basically. We're lifting a wall, routine, lifting a wall, and in a position where, if you were to spread 4 guys out on that wall evenly, we were lifting over a stair hole, so we're all creeped to the one side. And then once we got the wall up kind of past that 45-degree mark, kind of spread back over. Now I've got the hole behind me, and the bottom of the wall plate bucked off the floor. Okay? So we're on the main floor, so we're about 3 feet above grade, 4 feet above grade. The wall bucked off the subfloor, pushing all 4 of us backwards. But me, of course, I had the open hole behind me, and I didn't fall on my butt on the subfloor. I fell an additional 9 feet to my back. And I remember vividly, it was like slow-mo. I see my feet. I felt myself fall back. I could look to the right. I see everyone falling back, and I kept going. And I watched the subfloor go by. I look back up. I see my feet above, and I react in this. I had this thought: I'm gonna fall on my head or my neck. This is gonna be bad. I thought that in slow motion. And I remember thinking, okay, tuck my head to my legs as though you're on an airplane and you put your head between your knees, because I want to avoid falling on my head or on the back of my neck. And I guess I did so because I ended up falling on the small of my back. So not on my butt where there's junk, right on the small of my back where there's no meat over my spine. And I just took an impact, knocked the wind out of myself. I fell immediately, and I rolled out of the way of the hole in case something would fall on me. And at that point, the wind was knocked out of me. I knew enough to not move because, if I was hurt. I knew I was hurt, and I didn't know if I was seriously injured. And, a slight move could, if I had a broken neck, a broken back, whatever. I just knew it really hurt. So that's what happened. We had one of the guys, we all panicked. One of the guys rushed down. I'm not moving. Comes down, stabilizes, just make sure I'm not moving, make sure I'm okay, checking my pupils. We're all distraught, big guys down. They're swearing. There was everyone's scared. I was scared. We were all scared. Ended up just laying there because I knew I can't move. I was asked, you got to call the ambulance. I was scared. I said, I don't want to call the ambulance. I want to relax here. So I laid there for maybe 25 minutes, got my breath, did a move. And then I decided, okay, I'm okay to get up. We're going to go to the hospital, but I do not want an ambulance. When I lifted my head, I got lightheaded. I felt nauseous. And then I got really scared because I thought, okay, something's really wrong here. You know, sat back down for another 15 minutes before I was able to work it up and to get up with the assistance of my crew, part of my crew. We weren't all there. Got driven to the hospital, went to Emerge, got checked out. They were pretty efficient. And, you know, no major injuries, but, you know, I fell right on my spine. There's no meat there. I had a football-sized swelling right over my back. I was hurt. The skin broke. You know, I fell. I wear a T-shirt, a collared shirt, and I had a big puffy work winter coat on. And I fell onto all that, and it still broke the skin all over my back. So that's what happened, guys. Long story short, I let my guard down. You know, there's no reason why that open hole had to have been there. You know, why did we cut the plywood out of the hole instead of just float it over like we normally do? I can't answer that. We let our guards down. I certainly don't claim to be, you know, running a tight ship, the safest crew, the safest work practices. But on the flip, I also don't think we're reckless. I don't. I don't think we're reckless at all. We put up railings and, you know, in windows, in doorways. We do typically ply over a hole, you know, and write with a crayon, do not step. You know, we take precautions, and that, you know, in certain ways we're cowboys, in certain ways we calculate our risk. But I think just overall the guard was down. So that's what happened, and it hurt. I was sore. I took some time off. It happened on a Monday night, and I was embarrassed. I was super embarrassed. I think it was either Thursday or Friday of that week that I came to, you know, I thought, what am I doing? Like, you know, I'm hurt. It's beyond just being hurt for this week. I'm going to be hurt all month. I know it. I'm down. Like, I can foresee it. It was right before the holidays, so I had that to look forward to. If I took a month off of work, I'll have an additional 2 weeks, rest up. But I was embarrassed, and, you know, I knew it shook my crew up, and it was an awakening, a rude awakening for my crew that, you know, we all let our guards down. We all got to be careful. And I, you know, actually with the support of Emma, my fiance, you know, I said, should I post about this? Like, is this crazy that I'm thinking about this? And, you know, we kind of talked it out, and it's like, it's real. I mean, you work construction, you work in a risky environment, and you got hurt. Accidents happen every day in our field, guys. We choose to ignore it, but, you know, I brought it to the social media, and I was really happy. It actually felt really good. It was like a form of therapy because I was so embarrassed. You know, and I'm down on my back. I can only watch so many movies, and it kind of gave me something to do. It gave me a community to talk to. I'm talking to guys that are saying, holy crap, your injury made me realize that we need to tighten up at work. Last week, I fell. Last month, my dad fell. Last year, this happened. And, you know, like, there was a support group. There was a discussion had that made me feel like, you know, I wasn't the only one. Because I'll tell you right now, when I fell, I thought, oh, I fucked up. I fucked up, and I'm an idiot, and I was really hard on myself. And after a few days, when I did bring it to social media, I was really glad I did, because I was really nervous about doing it, because, you know, no one likes to post your fails, right, Tyler? You know, we don't like to post, you know, our mistakes on the job, our first tries at you know, a tricky trim spot. We post our final product, but, like, that's the way I looked at it. This is a fail. This is real. This is the environment in which we work in. So that's what happened, guys. I mean, it's you know, it sucked. It hurt, and like I said, I don't claim to be perfect. We run a crew. You know, I don't work for the safety industry. You know, so I think a lot of guys were taken to my stance, my discussion, because I wasn't preaching from the point of view of I work for OSHA, I work for a safety institution. Hey, I work in construction, and, I'm talking about safety. That's not common for construction guys to really talk about safety. You know, I went through at the hospital, I went through the process about, you know, they ask you, is this work related? How many of you guys had an employer, if you guys got hurt growing up and you had to go to the hospital, A, how many of your employers would, you know, promote you going to the hospital, and B, would they say, tell the truth? So, you know, in our 9 years, we've had, I think there's been 3 times that 3 crew members had to go to the hospital. And, you know, we never had this discussion about, if we get hurt and go to the hospital, what do we say, Jeff? We never had that discussion. But when it happened, all 3 of them said, what do I say? And I, you know, at the time I said, tell them the truth, man. Like, if your life has changed, they need to know the truth, because, you know, I can't afford to take care of you for your life if you're not here at work. Tell them the truth. But I'd never gone through that process at the hospital, and it's a scary one. And I went through it. And I think, you know, there was a value to me being the employer that pays that insurance, that pays that WSIB, to have gone through that, where they're asking you, was this work related? Is it, you know, what company do you work for? Do they have WSIB? And all of those things. And I mean, it was interesting to go through personally, because I think a lot of employers in this industry, they're very scared of it, because an accident equals money. You know, you pay insurance for your car, you bang up your car, calling your insurance is going to go up, you know? So it was a very interesting thing to go through. But at the same time, it wasn't uncommon. It was very real. It happened.
Did you meet with your team after? And kind of,
I called them from the hospital once I was out. Like, my team, they're my buds, man. They're my friends. Like, I texted them all, big Harv down. You know, just want you guys to know I'm okay, because they had all talked.
mm-hmm.
Only half my crew was there, but the whole crew knew. So I called them all that night.
Did you? But I guess more so, was it something
safety issue?
Yeah. Did you guys like change your approach with things? I mean, I can imagine yes, but I guess the better question would be how.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, I don't think we did anything drastic. You know, where we struggle in safety practices, when we frame a house up, our focus is get that roof on, because we got to, you know,
get a shell.
The owner, the builder, we got to get shingle it. So build the second floor walls. Now we're going to go build the stairs. You know, or we're just going to hop onto the roof. We're going to be climbing up a ladder for 3 weeks until we get this roof on. So since I fell, you know, that's one thing that you know, we kind of came up, because I brought this to the team in a way where I'm not telling you that we need to get safer. We all know. But now, out of 9 of us, let's all, like, I can't be the only one to say we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. So I approached the team and said, I want everyone to come up with an idea of what we have to do from your perspective, because we're all different. We all see it differently. And one of the ones that one of the team members brought up is, why do we wait to build the temporary stairs? Because it's not only unsafe, it's also unproductive to be losing time. Go get a tool, go get a new box of nails, and you have to carry it up a ladder. Okay, so, you know, since the new year, now it's like, build the floor, build the stairs before we start laying out walls. You know, there's 4 guys on site. One guy go build stairs, the other 3 guys go get plates, go get studs, sweep up the floors. And that is the thing that we changed, like, indefinitely, because there was always a rush, get the thing on. But, like, you know, what does an hour take to build the temp stairs? What is that actually going to save you when you're trying to rush to get that roof done? It's probably going to save you 2 hours, because you're just running up and down stairs. You know, we're lax with railings around a stair hole, or you know, again, it's like, build the walls and then put up the railings. Okay, well, if we can cover that hole, so on these double frame, these projects, we do the stair hole, and then I noticed Jay had kind of built like a kind of half-ass floor system over this hole with 2x6 on flat, 3/4 down, and he just throws a piece of plywood in there. It's like, that's brilliant. that took you what, 15 minutes, 5 studs, couple scrap pieces of ply, So those are what we've really changed. We don't wear hard hats on the job site unless a safety inspector comes by, and we still don't. I'm not saying that's wrong or that's right, but it was a rude awakening. And the cool part about the social media aspect and the discussion was so many guys said, because of my injury, because of my accident, it was a wake-up call for them as well. So
yeah, not just your crew.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, absolutely. I think outside looking in, I know I walked our jobs and, and it was so relevant, and I was watching it, you tell the story that, it was the same thing. I'd walk a job and realize, hey, that there's an issue there, or that's a potential safety issue. And I'll be the same to admit, it's like we're not 100% up to snuff with safety, and we are lax with it, and I get called out with it. I just walked our job with that curved staircase. It's a 3-story condo. It's got 2 curved staircase. There's finished treads on it. It's finished plaster on the sides. There's not a good way to install a temporary handrail. But that can't be my excuse. That can't be, well, we're going to damage something, or we're going to have to patch plaster, so we can't do a temp rail. It's, no, we do. We have to figure out a system. Like, this isn't safe. And we were talking about it in the office today. It's like, how do we solve that? If we can't put a handrail, what do you have to do? I don't know. We're going to have to do a retractable lanyard at the top ceiling with a beam, and I don't know. But it's the fact that it's a question and we're talking about it. That's obviously the first step into making sure that it is something that we're actively trying to work towards, is that making sure that I tell anytime, we have more issues with subcontractors than my guys, but I'll walk a job and I'll have a guy up on the roof. We have a 12 pitch on a project, up on a roof, no harness, in the middle of the roof, fixing a piece of trim. And I looked at him and I yelled up to him. I'm like, get off the roof. And I'm like, your life is not, this project is not worth your life or an injury, by any means. I don't care about the fine that I could get. I don't care about OSHA showing up. The fact that you're putting your life at risk for the benefit of this project is bogus.
But the other side of that is, I've had one of my really good friends who's my best man. His dad owned a refrigeration company, and he lost a guy on a commercial site. Not his site, but he shut his company down because, like Jeff said, like we all say, it's family. When you lose a family member like that, it's how do you go back to work when, the logo was made up of all the parties involved, and when you lose that person, he just couldn't live with it. So forget the fines. It's just that life isn't worth that piece of trim. Mm-hmm. And I think, not to jump on your talk, but I think it didn't. I think when I was a carpenter, it was like a motorcycle. It was only a matter of time before you crashed. It wasn't if, it was when.
Right.
And I think you were always you're gonna slip off a roof. It was just a matter of time. That's how it was brought up. But I think it didn't change for me until I had my kids. Even when I had clients on jobs and they had kids, it didn't click. But when you have your own kids and they come to your job site, it makes you look at the whole thing in a whole new perspective, meaning, is this safe enough that my client's going to walk through? And I've had the stories where we had a past client where they were building a Cape house, and Jeff, similar to you, they had they had 10-foot ceilings from first floor to basement, plus your joist, so they're like 11 something, and one of their kids fell through a return duct it was cut, but it wasn't in. Kid fell through, broke his arm. This also happened with the one of the guys from California. His daughter, remember, a couple years ago, he was all over social media, and they had basically poured the front landing for foundation, but they hadn't filled it in with stone. And remember his stories, he'd walk over plywood to the front of the house every day, and he was doing that. And then his daughter fell off the plywood and fell down 10 feet, broke her arm. I forget, it's CW. I met him a couple times. Mm-hmm. But either way, it's when you look at it, I think everyone, if you don't understand what you're doing, think about it like I'm building a house, and what happens if a kid walks in there? Like, we were all kids, We all went to job sites. We all
Right.
stole 2x to build your fort. Like, the liability involved there now is really tough. And I think about it as a kid's perspective. I mean, obviously, when guys are on the roof, different thing. But when you're leaving the site at the end of the day, how are you leaving it intact where someone sneaks on, someone wants to view it because they're a neighbor? What liability are you in, putting yourself out there for if they walk it and they want to be like that old worker Tom where he jumped down on a nail to get workman's comp? There's people out there that are vicious,
Right.
Sure.
that want to
go
take
after
advantage
it.
of that, where you don't have the do not enter sign, you don't have the security camera, and they're like, I got this. This is payday. They exist.
I think part of the biggest problem is it's not out of necessity. It's out of almost the bare minimum. It's like a code where if people are putting up something for safety, it's in case somebody drives by. That, okay, this passes. Like, we're not going to get banged for this, where it's not actually there to be protecting somebody.
True.
I think if people were taking their safety measures more so out of necessity rather than not getting a fine, that it'd be a different story. Where if something were to happen, maybe, why not go above the standard if it's going to protect somebody or it's going to ease your mind. Even in Jeff's situation, a lot of times you do things so long that you don't really consider any other option. It's not until he fell down a hole that he even considered putting stairs in is going to actually have him get that roof on faster, because now he's not humping stuff up and down a ladder the whole time, but just like you're so immersed in it. And it's like, we got to go, go, go. And you think that slowing down to do that is going to slow you down, when in actuality, it's going to speed you up. And I think you need almost something like that, or somebody to explain their story for you to kind of shake your head and come to reality and say, hey, this is what we need to do, not only for safety, but for productivity and everything else. And the shame of it is, a lot of times that doesn't happen until somebody gets a fine, somebody gets hurt, somebody gets killed. Again, it's reacting rather than putting something in place to prevent something happening before it does.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you watch these safety videos, and it's like they show you a guy that gets his hand caught in the machine, or like they try to
lockout, tag out.
yeah, they try to scare. It's the scare tactic, and it's like they have the right idea about educating, and like Tyler, you said, someone sharing their story or explaining their story or explaining the benefits of how they corrected something, and it really is. It's the discussion first, but when you can relate it, and Jeff, like a lot of people have reached out to you and related, similar situations, or the fact that they probably went on the job the next day and they were standing next to an open stair hole and they were like, man, I watched Jeff's stories yesterday and he fell through one of these, and then, hey guys, let's put a railing up around this, or let's put a couple 2x6 on the flat and cover this thing up. I learned yesterday that it doesn't take much for a credible guy to fall down into that hole and get really hurt.
Well, that's it. I mean, I see all three of you guys every day on Instagram, and everyone's in a good mood, bubbling, dealing with what they're dealing with. But if I see something that you're teaching me, I bring it back to the team, and that was the point of it. I don't know if you guys saw that recent post. I believe it came out of Toronto. I could be wrong. Those table saw stops,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and how many videos we've seen of it hitting like the raw wiener. So I saw a post of a guy showing his finger, and he cut his finger with the saw stop, and then he had the mechanism with the blade jammed into it because he'd replaced it. And his post was about like, holy crap, I bought this saw because it was cool. The idea was cool, but I never thought that it would save me.
Was that Jeff Mack?
It was Jeff Mack.
Yeah,
That's where I saw it.
yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was
Yeah.
Jeff Mack or
It was,
what.
yeah.
Yeah.
A few places now, but seeing that post on Jeff Mack's, I've seen those saws for a couple of years, and I see them in the store, and I think, yeah, you know what, cool, but I don't know. I probably wouldn't. I'm a professional. That's the way I think
Yep.
about it.
Right.
Cool, but I can't justify it. Whatever.
The hobbyist.
And then I saw that. I'll tell you right now, the next table saw I'm going to buy for the job will be a saw stop.
Right.
100%. 100%. because listen, like I fell on my back. It really hurt. Like I promised myself I will never fall on my back again. When I was 20 years old, I shot myself with a pass load strip nail. I've never shot myself since, and I refuse to shoot myself ever again. Because, learn from your mistakes, falling on my back, shooting myself with a pass load, the guy getting a saw stop, that's all being reactive. Well, the saw stop was different. He was being proactive by investing in that saw stop.
Right.
Use what you learn. Guys would have seen that on an Instagram. Harvey Holmes got hurt. And like you said, we would have, guys went to their jobs and go, hey, let's cover this hole up. Harv fell.
If you don't share that and you don't put that word out, then you fell for nothing. It's the same thing when somebody dies. If you don't make changes and you don't alter your life or you don't alter what you're doing, then that person died for nothing. And I think that by you getting on there and sharing that experience, now it gives a lot of value. That's not just you. That's not just affecting your team now. You don't know how many people that's trickling down to. So at the end of the day, that's for the greater good of everyone. And now you didn't just fall for Harvey Holmes' safety, you fell for everyone else.
I'm glad you said that because I truly think it's one of my favorite posts since I've been doing the posts. Not because it got traction, created discussion, because it was hard for me to post, but I know it was hard because it was real. And like you said, it I think it helped. It's probably my favorite post, and it sucks that it came at the expense of it happening to me. But I haven't seen anyone else post that, and I wish. I don't wish it upon anybody else, but had I have, maybe it would have saved me from falling.
But it's so genuine, and it's not about likes. It's not about how you get more followers. It's you, and it's real. And I think, I honestly, if I saw it from somebody else, I'd be like, maybe they're reckless. But it's the same as the Jeff Mack thing. You've seen that saw stop 100 times, but it was so meaningful that this guy's a pro. When they just hammer through stuff, but it still happens to him. There's a reality to that where, you have to take that. It's credible. It's a credible threat, and you have to think about it. And I think, like you both said, it would have been foolish not to post it, and it's a pride thing. But I'm glad you did it.
And to touch on the social media, like it was at a time where I was kind of feeling stale, and I'm like, what am I posting? Like, what's the purpose of my posting? Like, you just go through stale moments where it's like, okay, I'm just going to show something else that I think I'm good at and that I'm enjoying, whatever, And then this happened, and it was like, oh, I can't share this. This is embarrassing. Like, what am I going to post? Like, I think I posted another meaningless post maybe on a Tuesday morning. I was like, that was so stupid. This is really happening. And then it was like, it re-inspired me to start posting like content that, to share with this community so that this community comes better, because like I said, I want to be that voice behind this voluntary trade that would somehow be this voice to help change that. This platform, what you guys are doing right here with this podcast, what we all do with social media, that is the platform to have a voice to create a change within an industry. Not just within a municipality, a province, a state, country, but like, look, we're talking country to country.
Dude, not just your job site, not just your crew.
No.
It's way beyond that. It's honestly, it's shocking every week. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, I think, you're bringing the right kind of value to a lot of people.
To the industry.
Right.
Yeah, we did get a bunch of questions, probably not enough, to be honest with you. But one of the ones that I was showing Nick while we were talking was, he says Jeff makes his apprentices hand nail before they get to use nail guns. Why?
I insist that new guys learn how to use a hammer before they use a nail gun, because you want to be a carpenter, learn how to use a hammer. I realize that tools are invented to be productive, efficient, all the rest of it. But if you can't nail off a piece of wood cleanly with a hammer, how can I trust you to nail a piece of wood off cleanly with a nail gun?
So you're trying to bring it back to means and methods, and then
Fundamentals.
you can create efficiency beyond that with the type of tool.
Fundamentals, metaphor. You want a stick handle with a brand new $300 carbon fiber stick and a nice puck signed by Wayne Gretzky. Here's a piece of wood, stick with an egg. Work on that.
You don't stick handle with that puck. I'm sorry. You keep that one on the shelf. It's between you and me. I'm just. If Wayne signed it's not going to
I think as well, like being new, being green, there's a lot of novelty behind tools, and tools are dangerous. They're to be respected. I think if you give a green guy a nail gun, and it's a matter of time before they're going to shoot themselves, the nail's going to deflect and shoot something else, and it's going to be sloppy. I think there's a lot of value in the trades to be able to know how to use your basic tools, not rely on all these extra great things. For me, a hammer is like a hatchet is the best tool in the world. I think the most, to survive, you need a hatchet. The closest thing would be a hammer. And if you can master that hammer, I think you are going to survive in this world.
So you as an owner see value in having them slow down in the beginning to speed them up later
Absolutely.
on. Because I think a lot of people don't
quality over quantity, and then quantity will come later. That's as an employer, that's me making my investment, and my investment will return once I'm comfortable, seeing where they're at. Because it's not just. There's also something about you can see in someone's character how they take to that. Oh, well, I have to use a hammer and nail and struggle, and it's hard, and I get frustrated, and you guys are all using air nails. Well, yeah, it's not just how well can you use a hammer and how quickly can you adapt. It's like, how does this character adapt? Because it's not easy to, toenail above your head into a Home Depot piece of lumber. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. But, with a nice wet piece of wood fresh from the lumber yard, on a good day where you're just firing on all 8 cylinders, there's nothing better than nailing off a piece of wood and you're just like, feeling great.
I miss it. You're like slapping me in the face right now because I miss it so much.
I made a comment a couple podcasts ago about how it's, it can't be always about speed, and everything is like, we'll fix it later and just let's go as fast as we can, and etc. But you said it in different words. I'd rather teach the guys to do it right and do it perfect and work towards quality, because if you can do it really good, the speed will just come because you'll become more and more efficient with it. And it's very similar. It's that you're slowing these guys down, that let's hit quality, and then when your quality's there, you can speed up, and then because your quality, you can never go the other way. You can never be fast and then try to be good. It has to be good then fast.
Well,
see, to learn how to nail a couple pieces of wood together, there's more than just knowing how to nail it up. How many nails per, or how many, within an amount of space. It's learning about wood. If there's a knot there, you're going to nail an inch and a half in from the end. If you're nailing a header together, a double 2x10, nail placement is everything. And if you're hand nailing it, you learn how to do that. You got to angle your nail a little bit so it doesn't poke out the backside. Not too much, because you want it to bite and almost poke out the backside. Within your nailing pattern, there's a knot. How far away can you put that nail? So A, it's not too close to the edge and it's not doing anything. Or B, it just kind of looks like crap. But once you learn that, when you feel it with your hands and you learn all those things, nail placements and the grain of the wood and all that, it helps you use a nailer. It helps you. Like if you just go banging away, a nail gun doesn't feel much different through a soft piece of wood than it does through a hard knot. But like, it sure as hell will bounce back at you.
Yeah, I think it's also respect that how it's going in. Where I was taught the same way. My old boss, who I thought was crazy at the time, made us hand do everything, including roofs. I had a hammer for every single part of my project, like whether it was framing, finish, roofing. We had a different hammer for all that stuff, and I thought he was crazy, but he was of the mentality that when you used the roof, it was you had sheathing then gap and then sheathing then gap, so you had a feel for when that nail was going through that gap, which to me was like, it's always sheathing. Like, what are we talking about? But he was teaching that method, and it did give me a whole new respect for, honestly, the power of a nail gun. taking 3 swings at a nail to get it in as a framer, and then having that gun just kind of rip through it real quick. You didn't put stuff on the other side of that. Like, I have a kid that's from the North Bennett Street, and he's like, just a simple thing of taking a 5-pound sledge and removing something frozen to the ground. He's swinging in his shins, like, behind the receiving end of the sledge. And I'm like, you might want to stop. Because if you miss that or you scuff it, you're breaking your shin. And he's like, have you done that before? I go, no, I haven't, but I've watched guys, like, go to slam down a sill and miss and then smoke their shin on it. Like, I've seen enough of bad things that I've learned that I don't ever want to. I've seen guys shoot themselves. I've never done it. I've actually been shot by people where the PSI was too high on the gun and someone's sheathing and I'm talking to somebody and it's sticking out of my shoulder. But it wasn't like, yeah, this is stupid things that can happen on a job site. But you have to be aware. And it's just thinking of the actual power that's there. Swinging 3 times and then a nail gun doing it for you, you have to respect that system and how it's being put together.
I think it slows you down enough, like Jeff said, that you're thinking about what you're doing. I mean, it's even if you were using a miter box, I guarantee you take more time to figure out what angle your actual corner's on, and where things are off than if you were using a miter saw, because you're using a miter saw and it's like, hey, I got to bevel it a half degree more, but if you're using a miter box, cutting it by hand, I guarantee you're going to make sure that you know exactly what it is. You cut it right the first time. It's just like toenailing. If you're toenailing by hand and you first set your nail and it's not in the right place, you're going to reset it and nail it through. If it's a nail gun, it's just like, oh, I missed. I'll shoot another nail in. I think it slows you down just enough that you get the technique down.
Yeah, and you're not just nailing 2 pieces of wood together. You're, you want to make sure that they're tight, that they're perfectly aligned. It's not just bang, 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 let's go next. That's basically it. And it's not a farce. It's not something we just put on our social media to say we're more carpenter than you. I don't know. It's just that's the way Scott brought me up, and that's the way I choose to bring them up, because I saw a lot of value in it for myself. And like Tyler said, it's learning more than just hitting a nail. There's a process, and you're taking it in. You're going slow enough to kind of really understand what and why you're doing it.
Agreed. I was going to hit another topic, but I want to take it back to when I first, found Jeff on Instagram, and it was all about Larry Hahn. Why don't you bring us all up to date on Larry Hahn?
You know what? I'm going to credit that to JJ. James, I didn't even know who Larry Hahn was, in all honesty. I mean, they played his videos in our theory classes in carpentry, but like I vaguely remember it. And James, I think we'd been working together now for a few years at that point. And he really started to, take to carpentry as a passion outside of work, where he's going home, he's YouTubing carpentry, how to frame of this, how to frame of that. And then he's talking, him and Mitchell are talking on the job site, like Larry Hahn and his sidekick. And I'm like, he's like, hey, fellow, 2 before this, 2 before that. And I didn't know what they're doing. I'm like, what are you idiots talking about? Like, what is this character? I assume they made it up. And then finally, maybe a month out, they're like, no, it's Larry Hahn. I'm like, I don't know. Larry who? And so I YouTubed them. And, I just basically I stole Jay's material and put it on the gram. you know what it was? I was trying to get Jay involved with the stories and the Instagram. And at the time he wasn't overly confident, but like, he's way smarter and wittier and funnier than me. And I was like, use that. And like, I use that as a tool to get him involved. So that's kind of where that is. So I attribute all that Larry Hahnness to Jay.
That's funny.
There's been many nights that I've wound up watching Larry Hahn frame something. I'm like, what am I doing? It's 1:30 in the morning. I should just go to sleep. Just watch him like rolling nails out of his. You see how he takes the nails and he'll like put them flat and then pull his fingers through them loosely and flip them around so it pulls the heads out. It's crazy.
He's our Bob Ross.
Yeah.
You guys ever watch that guy, the artist?
He's so old and he's
Happy
so
Tree.
Yeah, it's like you can just watch those guys, listen to them. There's something therapeutic about his voice, very similar to like David Attenborough. Like, you know, Planet Earth. Like, you know, Larry Hahn's voice, you could just listen to him and watch him, and it's pleasing.
That's funny.
What's next, John?
Hold on. Stop yelling at me.
Look, I'm scrolling through.
No, it was my phone shut off. I mean, it is an obvious thing that I don't think I picked up on it, and someone recognized it and highlighted it, was that, you know, we talked about age, but your crew is fairly young, and you're producing high quality of work. That's usually not the rule of thumb. Usually with younger guys, there's a lot of, you know, cutting corners, millennials, blah, blah. But how do you get the performance out of those guys besides, hey, swinging a hammer when you start? How do you get that performance ingrained early that these guys respect that? You know, because you have, you know, Molly, you have apprentices that are in here that are producing for you guys, but you're not, I don't see it from social media. I'm not seeing that like lapse or that training, that in the hiccups and the redos. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Well, first of all, John, like, thank you for wording that the way you did, because you've never been on our job sites, but for you to say that it seems as though we're producing quality, it means a lot, because, you know, we truly do produce quality. And I think that's a bold statement for me to say, because that's, you know, this is my company and this is my crew, but we truly do. And we are a younger crew. And I don't know. I think it has to do with Scott's work ethic that he taught to me, that my brother-in-law Baker, when I started the company, he started with me and very easily adapted to that work ethic. And everyone that's kind of, you know, coming, there's been guys come and gone. The guys that have stayed, we all, I guess, are relatable, because they found a place where their pace is, you know, we're stimulating them. We're all on the same pages. Work hard. I don't know, man. Honestly, I feel really lucky. I can't say that I did this or I did that to create this, but I'm very lucky that the people within the crew have been magnetized to this crew and have taken a chance on this company. And everyone is very much invested in their own ways and their own efforts. And I don't know, I'm very lucky. And we get a lot of positive feedback from a lot of different trades that were on job sites, not just our job sites, but other job sites. You know, when I cold call builders saying, hey, you looking for a framer for this project or projects in the future, you know, I don't hesitate to follow that phone call, text, email up with a job address that is ongoing, saying, swing by whenever you want on your schedule. I don't need to be there, and just go introduce yourself. Talk to Jay, talk to Ty, walk through. And that's how we get a lot of our work. I just invite anybody, go at your own pace. Like, you know, I don't need to prepare for you, and, you know, I don't know.
So how are you into, like, you know, how are you getting these people? Like, I'm talking to people now where, you know, people are asking me how I'm going to grow, and I've looked at it in a whole different mentality, that it's like almost dating. Like, Nick, we've talked about this before. It's like when I'm interviewing people, I can see through their experience. I can see through their mannerisms. I can see through that stuff. It's more, hey, are they a fit? Like, as if we're dating. It sounds so weird, but it's like,
it's so important.
It's so important, but I feel like you've found that kind of, I don't know, formula that, you know, when I see the stories and it's like I'm jealous. It's like, I mean, I have a good setup now with Benny and there's only two of us, but it's like to have that many people on a crew and to have that kind of growth, but to find the right people for it to fit and to have that energy, those smiles, that production through the winter, through whatever adversity you have, that's really special. And like, I mean, I know we can, you know, kick it back to Scott, your old boss, but, you know, some of the corrections you took from Scott and created in your company and the culture, I mean, there's got to be. Give us the formula. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to
That's
produce
the
it.
difference. That's the key. When I decided I was going to do what Scott does, but do it better, this is the key. So my hiring process is fairly simple. Minus Baker and James, who came before social media. And I encourage you to ask James, his interview process and how we became to be colleagues if he ever joins this podcast with you guys. I'll let him tell that story.
Pit Viper.
Yeah, the Pit Viper. It's a good story. But I'll let you ask him yourself. But social media has been a great tool. Not going to lie. Probably my biggest feedback, guys, weekly is, guys DMing me saying, I wish I worked for a guy like you. I wish I worked for a guy like you. I wish I worked for a guy like you, past tense and present. Can I work for you? Okay. Almost weekly. And, I'm not growing I'm not taking all these guys, but I watch these guys. When I get those messages, I go through their profiles, I analyze, and I just let it sit. And it's very judgmental because what can you actually tell that's real? It's very difficult unless you follow them every day and whatever you want to do. But when I need to expand, I do a hiring campaign on my Instagram, hiring, and I'll get a flood of 30 some odd people, and it's the same thing. I don't want to see a resume. I don't care to read a resume. Call me. You know how many people, when I get a DM saying, hey, here, can I email? What's your email? I'm going to send you a resume. And my response is, call me only. Like, just call me. They can send me a paragraph telling why or whatever, hoping to get my email or whatever. Call me. Number. Do you know how many people call out of that 30 people?
2.
Maybe. I was going to say maybe 5, maybe. So then you get 5 phone calls. And I just go with my gut. Like, how does this person sound? I say to the same thing to all 5. Okay, so, come in for a tryout. Just like a hockey tryout. I used to play hockey. I tried out. I made teams. I didn't make teams. Come in for a tryout. But I make it clear. Do not burn a bridge with your current employer. Come in on a Saturday. If you can, come in on a Friday. If it's, talk to your boss. Tell him what you're up to. Ask him what day you can come in for a tryout. And that'll weed out 50% of those 5. Maybe I'll get 2 people who will actually have the cojones to go to their employer as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old and say to their employer, I would like to go try out for another job. And they'll come in for a Friday and a Saturday. And then, we have 2 days together. And then basically I talk to the crew. Jay, Ty, what do you think of them? We talk it out. Mitchell, what do you think? What do you think of her? What did you think of her? And we all discuss it because, I don't hire people with resumes. It doesn't work for me. I like to hire young people who we can build a resume together. But what I look for is someone that I can hang out with for the day. Is this person a good person? Do I think this person do I think this person could be a hard worker? These are things I ask myself. Do I think this person, is this going to be a career choice or is this a job? It's hard to tell, but we do tryouts.
So you're having them swing a hammer, not just kind of come in at lunchtime and sit with everybody and talk.
You know what I tell them when they came in? Like Mitchell, for example, when he came in, I tell him, I said, bring your tool belt and come in for the day. They come in for the day. They bring their boots. They bring a helmet. They bring their belt. I say, put your belt on. If we're working on the second floor, I tell them, be close. If you want to jump in, but don't just jump in, like ask to come in. But I just want you to stand there and be a sponge if you want to, and I talk to them. We just talk. Mitchell, for example, Mitchell said, well, can I do something? Or I think Mitchell just saw it. We were doing something and he just put himself in a position where it's like, that's helpful. And no one had to ask you and we weren't expecting anything. And he just put himself in that spot. It's like, it's like Boston breaking out of their end, man. It's just like the guy who just puts himself in the spot like unexpectedly. And it's like, that guy's a team player, he just knows it. So, Mitchell just put himself in that spot. We've had tryouts where it's like, no way. We've done head-to-head tryouts where I've had
Love it because of
3 guys
tryouts.
coming in the same week, and then we pick one guy. Yeah, Molly was funny because, full transparency, hired Molly on contract. I don't want to be this firm that hires and fires, but I look at corporate and I go, why can they hire when they're busy and fire when they're not busy? And like no one talks about them. And this was Emma's idea as well. She goes, well, they hire on contract, so they're expected to only work for 6 months and then they're gone. So it was fall 2 years ago. I put out a hiring campaign saying, looking to hire someone on contract from October till Christmas Eve. That's it. Who's going to leave their stable employment to take a chance for 3 months? Well, 2 people did. And 3 people did. This was Jake and Molly. 3 people did. And out of those 3 people, I mean, by Christmas Eve, the last day of the year, I was happy for one to go. And the other 2, I thought, I can't lose these guys. These guys are special. They're one of us. I can see it. And so I took Molly on immediately after the new year. And that was me making my investment. I didn't necessarily have the work, but I was like, I don't want to lose this person. So I'm going to put this person and we're going to crowd this crew because we have to start working at becoming a team, because when you add someone new, changes the team. And the following month, I got Jake back. Jake had some work and he goes, well, I can, it was on contract, so I actually have work, but if you want me, I'll come. I need a month. Jake, let's go. And I took 2 people on in the winter in the slow time, but that was the investment to like meld this team back together, because when you put 2 people in, it broke the team up in a sense. Tyler, Bake, and me were kind of over here. Mitchell, we're over here. Mitchell's wondering, where do I stand? These new guys are in here. And then it's like, no, let's get to know each other. I don't want pecking orders. It's just, we're a team. I truly treat this like a team. And we all do. Everyone's individually invested. It's that's my process to hire. I mean, tryouts, and I really, the realization as an employer, when you hire somebody, they are your investment, and investments, very seldom do they get you instant return. And that's the way I treat my hiring.
Yeah, you have to look at the long term, and that's super. Like everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but so many people are so focused on that short term goal that they're clouded by what could be, what could be the long term goal with the investment of younger people or green people or people that don't have any experience, like being able to be malleable into something that you're building and having them be part of that team.
But you also have to trust your gut. I mean,
absolutely.
Knowing that one of those guys have to go and 2 have to stay is key. And just knowing when to let go, because if you hold on too long and have this emotional connection, then there's so much other dynamics that get involved where there is part of it. It's just a business.
Yeah, I mean,
and you have to move on. Otherwise,
it's tough. I mean, I've dealt with this recently and on multiple occasions, and it's never the easiest thing, especially for me. It's very much an emotional decision, but grand scheme of things, it has to be a business decision, and it has to be that gut check and understanding that it's not only for the company's benefit, but realistically it's the team, but it's also theirs. Like typically what it comes down to is that individual is just not in a position where they could be successful long term with your firm,
or they're taking advantage of the organic system that's there.
Right.
I mean, it goes.
That's just it.
Yeah. I mean, they can ride away.
Sorry, Johnny.
No, good.
I was saying, I recently tried something where, I brought someone in and they had a resume. It was a bit against my, what I've done, but full transparency, can't have you in my crews because my crews are set. So it's like, let's build something different. And, unfortunately it didn't work out because I wasn't comfortable and I didn't want it to affect the crews that we had put so much effort in together to build this team. And, you got to call the shot, and It sucks. Like you, Nick, I find it very emotional. It's hard for me to separate. I think why Harvey Homes and Interiors is such a team is because I have difficulty separating emotion from the business. I treat it very much like a family business, even though it's not. It really is to me. So it's really tough calling those shots and making those moves. But there's been people in Harvey Homes come and go, and it happens because it is a business. It's really hard. But what you see every day, guys, with the crew that you see, like, man, I stress so much and I want so much for this team to succeed in every way. And because I really like hanging out with these guys.
Kind of off topic, but I kind of like, from when you were 17, you were kind of pushed in, like, coerced into this industry. You wanted to do something else, and it was, I don't know, would it be safe to say, like, a path of least resistance, what you wanted to do is an interest of yours, but, like, you didn't necessarily have, like, a set in stone direction with that? Was that just like, I don't know exactly what I want to do, I'm going to try this path out and see what happens, with, like, the cooking and all that stuff, like being a chef?
Yeah. So when I was 17, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't confident. In the last year of high school, when everyone was applying to colleges and universities for these career paths, I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
So that's pretty much what I had kind of gotten from you, but didn't want to say that had I been wrong. I mean, it's very similar to myself. When I got done high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Supposed to go to college. I was kind of unhappy with everything that I was doing, and I didn't really have a direction. And I showed up and I did well and I did what I had to do, but my heart wasn't in anything. And it seems like when you found carpentry, you went from being the drive didn't seem like it was there. Like, the drive that you have now, the passion that you have now, the want and desire to be successful shifted. Because when you were 17, it doesn't seem like that's what you had. Was that just finding carpentry, you think, that kind of brought that out within you?
I think it was finding, for me, it was carpentry, but it's what carpentry offered me. What carpentry offered me was a creative outlet, a highly stimulated work pace. It offered me problem solving, mental stimulation. It offered me, an athleticism, component to this work that, exercise that. It offered me, opportunities to do something that, can also be used as a stepping stone if I want to step out of carpentry and into real estate or into development or it offered the fundamentals and the foundation towards all those other steps, not knowing that when I was 17. But when I was 17, I was attracted to the mental stimulation, the problem solving, the athleticism. Like I told you, first thing I noticed is I could build a half pipe. And when I was 17, I thought I was going to, I thought I was going to ride my bike for a living. I thought I was going to be like friggin' X Games, like Dave Mira. That was I'm telling you guys, like, I was like, people ask what you do, I'd be like, I ride bikes. I used to tell them that at the bar. Everyone, what do you do? I'm in second year, law, undergrad, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm a marine mechanic. I'm a this and I'm a that. Like, they're just, how you doing? And they're telling me what they do for a living. And I'm like, I still ride bikes. But meanwhile, I worked at the restaurants and stuff, like, just wanted to. And that was the first love, the first kiss I got from carpentry. It's like, if I can build an upside down open ceiling, I can build a half pipe, and I'm going to this weekend.
I guess it kind of leads into the discussion with the younger generation and getting kids involved. You spent 17 years 16 years without really having your hands in a trade for whatever reason. For me, it was 16, 17 years of kind of dealing with it or seeing a side of the industry that I didn't love or wasn't able to take pride in. And I think, I didn't have the direction. I didn't have the desire to be successful. Like I said, I always showed up and I did what I had to do. And on paper, everything looked good, but I wasn't who I am today. And it always makes me wonder, if people were to push the trades a little more heavily than they do, what would have happened had you gotten your feet wet at 14, at 12, helping out? It's like as soon as it was presented to you, you hit the ground running. And I think that's important for the discussion where we're trying to get these younger kids involved, where they're not getting exposed to it, where you had this entire passion and what you've basically devoted your life and business and social group to, which is all based around carpentry. And you kind of stumbled upon that because it was like, hey, if you want to go to culinary school and live here, you're going to pay rent. If you go work for Scott, we'll cut you a break and you can live here for free. So you didn't have that exposure. And there's this outlet that you basically built your life around now. How many kids are experiencing that where there's no exposure to this industry because of whatever reason? And they have an entire life. Your social group is based around this. Everyone who you work with, your life, everything that you're doing with it right now is based around this career and this trade that you kind of stumbled upon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd surely say a lot more young people are exposed to the trades today at a younger age than they were certainly when I was in high school. And I say that because nowadays, when a high school does its, job university fair for grade 12 students, when they go to the assembly and talk about different university college choices, there's also courses promoting, in Toronto here, renovation technician, building specs, there's all these one-year diploma courses where when I was graduating, not an option. Apprenticeships were promoted to students who, without them, would not be able to graduate high school in the academic stream. They were failing, they were shy, they were troubled skipping classes. Okay, you need to collect so many credits to graduate this year with your peers. So rather than going to math class and English class and drama, here's your options. You take a co-op and you go work at the local auto body shop and put in X amount of hours. All you have to do is go put in the hours. Chances are that employer may even pay you outside of what the school's regulations were because they appreciate the effort and you took to it. When I went to that job fair in grade 12, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt like crap because of it, because everyone around me was, talking about university this and I'm going to do that. I went to the Army booth and I thought, maybe I'm meant to join the Army. Education's free. Look at how athletic they are. In Canada, we're probably not going to war. That's actually what I thought. I swear. So, nowadays, I like to think the social media, I mean, I think, I'm biased because my social media feed is all construction related, but, only what I see. But, I think it helps young people seeing it, when they get a summer job, they use social media and they kind of dabble into that community a bit. I don't know. I feel more and more are looking at it. And also because I think with the real estate market, the way it's been, parents are more accepting of the trades because they're making money off real estate. Kind of those 40, 50, 60-year-olds in the last 10 years, a lot of them started making money in real estate. Maybe they've owned one or two houses. Like my parents, for example, we owned, one or two houses, me growing up. And then in the last 10 years, it's like they're investing in real estate because real estate's rising. And then it's like, to maximize the value of real estate, you need trade workers. And now you're realizing you're paying trade workers. People are paying parents are paying trade workers to maximize the value of their investment. And they're seeing what they're cutting these checks for to these trade workers. And they're thinking, little Timmy, my son, I'm forcing him to go spend $100,000 next year at a university that I don't think he could do because, my son's a little, and why doesn't he go work for this plumber? It's like every parent can't believe their kid was like the best thing. There must be that parent who thinks, oh God, like my kid wants to go to that university because his girlfriend's going and I'm going to pay for him. There's no way he stands a chance. But it's like, but meanwhile, they're investing in our industry, real estate. And I think it's becoming more accepted with parents and promoted to the children, the youth today, just because as a reflection of, the real estate market today. Listen, our grandparents never saw the real estate do what it's done in the last 10 years in their whole life.
Right.
My grandfather would be rolling in his grave if he knew, like, if he saw what real estate is doing right now.
No, I totally agree. I think it's crazy. I do think kids with HGTV and everything else, it is exposed a lot more than what, this old house on PBS, which was, a small niche, is exposed to. I was joking with my son this weekend where I was like, we were at Roach Brothers, a grocery store, and I was like, dude, you could be working here a couple of years. He goes, nope, like that quickly. And I was like, why? What are you gonna do? He goes, work for you. Didn't even look at me. He was just like still looking forward because he had his he had his ice cream. Dude, it was funny what he picked up. He's like, we had played pond hockey, which you'd love. And I'm like, what do you want to do for dinner? He's like, I want sushi. So we went to Roach Brothers. He got sushi, ice cream, and cheese and crackers. And I was like, who are you? Like, this is his
you wouldn't even eat that.
This is what his walkaway was. He's got his hands full. And I'm like, dude, I could, because there was a bunch of young kids at the teller. And I was like, you could totally be working here in a couple of years. And he didn't even look up at me like just to be like, hey, no, Dad, I got you. I'll work for you. He was just like, nope. I'm like, where are you going to work then? He's like, with you. I was like, all right. And I was like, I felt cool. Like, I was just like, maybe it's just me, but maybe it's like, maybe he does want to do. And I do think there's a huge future in the trades, with, on the other end of it where I'm going to talk out of school here, where it's AI is taking over, has the potential to take over so many industries between, hedge fund people, doctors and all that stuff. I mean, unless we let this industry simplify itself to a point where it is all panelized systems and trusses and the creativity is lost, this will be a hands-on industry forever. And it's going to come back around to us where we are the most valued people because we know how to do it. And I think parents are seeing that more and more, and I think it's happening. Whether it's coding, it's going to be like coding, and it's going to be like carpentry. Maybe it's me being biased, but those are like the two big things, You're
not far off.
I'm hoping.
I want to, I personally want to thank you for coming on the podcast, for one. But two, also, it's refreshing to see somebody give back to so many younger people with your company. And it sounds like a lot of your intent and a lot of your drive is to take what you were given and do better than that. The opportunities that were presented to you, while they weren't perfect, I think that they shaped you into who you are. And I think that you're taking that and doing, 1, 2 better than that. And I think that you're giving opportunities to a lot of kids that may not necessarily have them in the industry. And I think for me, the safety stuff, very important. But I think on the bigger picture, that's the takeaway from this that I have, is just that you're creating this dynamic and this culture within your company that, like you said, it's a family and everyone's looking out for one another. And you're not only looking out for your company's well-being, personally, you're looking out for your company as a whole, and everyone, creating a career, making money to be able to support a family, to buy a house. And like you said, you're most exciting day is payday, where you're giving back to these people and you're seeing, you're helping them save. And I think that if there were more bosses out there creating a culture like you, it would help that point of entry would be a little bit easier for everyone to get involved.
I really appreciate that, Tyler. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Kind words, man.
Yeah, I'll second what Tyler said. The fact that, you're giving back on so many levels, not only the apprenticeships, or not only, putting quality over speed and quantity, but, sharing, your experience when you were 17, but also the tough experiences that you deal with on a day-to-day. I think that goes, as you're seeing, specifically to the fall incident, how far that really goes and how much awareness you can bring to different portions of this industry. And for that, I second what Tyler said. I thank you for sure.
Right on, man. No, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and chew the fat with you guys. From Toronto, I've looked up to all you guys. My Instagram game before the construction thing was very similar to most people. I think you don't have a real direction for it, just kind of personal life stuff. And Nick, yours was, I think, probably one of the first Instagram profiles that in the construction community that stood out. And I was like, who is this guy? And what is this cat doing? And how is he making it look so cool? And I want to do that. And
your profile was just all bikes.
Yeah, it was I took a break for bikes for 10 years, but then the resurgence of 10 years old, never years, here's my bike, my shitty video of me doing half-ass park being old school. Invented being old school. What are you talking about? No, Nick, I was your profile is really cool. It stood out, kind of to me, opened the door into this construction world. And shortly after, Here's Johnny was one, I think that was the second one. And Tyler, you were probably within the first six. And you guys really kind of opened my door to this community. And for that, I thank all of you guys individually, because I do think there's a value in what we do with our social medias as an extension of what we do for our professions. Nowadays it's part of our profession. It's media marketing, and then as well, it's giving back to this community that we are involved in. And you guys you're doing a great job at leading by example. And this is I thank all of you guys individually.
Well, thanks. We usually ask people who they're crushing on from Instagram. I don't know. It seems like you're very team oriented. Why don't you give us the name of who works with you? Give us their Instagram account so everyone can kind of check them out.
Okay. I would definitely do that anyways. So my Insta crushes have to be my crew members. Ty Baker 87. Don't go there because he won't post back to you.
So he gets the first shout out.
Yeah. Let's flood Baker's DMs. Secondly, let's flood Mitchell Birkin's DMs. He will probably not hit you back. But Mitchell Birkin, at Jake Kavanaugh, Jake the Snake, aka Diesel. He's starting to post more content in construction. It's really cool to see. Of course, JJ Hazzy at JJ Hazzy, aka Pit Viper, aka Horns Up, aka James. He's probably one of I think a lot of people's favorite profile right now. He's killing it. And then we have at Molly the Apprentice, which I wonder if she's going to change her Insta handle once she writes her exam and is no longer an apprentice, because it's right around the corner. At Molly the Apprentice is a great profile. And then the latest and greatest, Caleb Lowenberg. He's our new recruit and a really great guy. If you look at one of my last recent posts of us lifting a wall, it's a video maybe within the last 6 days. There's a comment, and all these people I just named are lifting this wall, and I'm filming from above, and there's a comment that says, "Who's the beast bare knuckling it?"
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
It's winter here. That's Caleb, 21-year-old Caleb. He's killing it.
Just no gloves.
I got one more question. No relation to the guy who hosts Family Feud.
Okay.
You?
Yeah, oh, me?
Yeah.
Steve Harvey?
Yeah.
No, not really. I looked. I disabled Facebook on my phone, and I tried to pull up my Facebook through Safari today to enter for that 10-year comparison where we looked.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even find myself on Facebook because there's so many Jeff Harveys. So,
Man, I was kind of hoping maybe you give me an autograph or something.
yeah, no relation. But guys, again, thank you so much for your time and inviting me on the Modern Craftsman.
Oh, thanks for spending
great.
the time.
Yeah. In closing, guys, to me, it's not so much carpentry as it is progression, because progression is the profession. And once you find your progression that you will always progress in, you will not retire.
Well put.
That's awesome.
I like that.
Well, thanks again, man.
Okay, horns up. Thanks, guys. Good
Thanks,
night.
Jeff.
Later, man.
See ya.
Ciao.
You can find us at themoderncraftsman.org, since you don't need the www. You can email us at info@themoderncraftsman.org or hit us up on Instagram, _Modern Craftsman. We're still.
You guys shaped this podcast, so if you have comments,
I wasn't done.
Oh,
We
tried to do-
broke another record.
did good all week.
You did? All right, my bad. I just wanted to talk about the record.
You going to stats? I thought you would.
I don't know numbers. I just know we broke another record. Tyler, do you know we broke another record?
I'm not going to brag until we
Yeah.
hit 10,000 hits.
Doug told us that we broke another record this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, single day downloads.
Single day downloads, 36 hundo.
Doug always gets super excited, sends us a text, and John's like, "Yeah, not good enough.
10
We need 10,000." And then
Right. We keep setting the bar.
so,
Yeah.
John says, you guys shape this podcast.
Correct. But yeah, so guys, if you have questions, please, we'll try and dig into them. It helps us shape that podcast that's coming forward. And then if you have comments about how the format is, how we're working it, just content in general, DM us or email us. And if you guys are loving it, what do you got to do, Nick?
Give us a review. That was
Great.
terrible. Give us a review.
That was way better.
Or a
Alright.
few reviews.
Or a few, yeah.
Yeah. We're stagnant on the written reviews. I think we're at 448.
That neighborhood.
Yeah, which is good. We're going for 1,000 by the end of the year. So let's keep rolling, people.
Later, guys. Take care.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.